In 1985, my husband, a man who lived off my family's wealth, swindled me out of my last bit of dowry. He claimed his business had failed and that he was drowning in debt. Then, he produced a packet of rat poison and tricked me and our 2 children into swallowing it. He said if we were to die, the whole family should die together, but as my children and I lay dying in agony, blood streaming from our orifices, he went back on his word. Later, using my dowry, he went south to start a business and became a billionaire. He took 4 concubines and was blessed with many children and grandchildren. I became the ill-fated first wife in the tycoon's story. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my husband tricked me into drinking poison for a lover's suicide pact. Su Hongxing took my last bit of dowry and swore an oath, once he made his fortune, he would come back to take me and our 2 children to the city to live a life of ease. 2 months later, Su Hongxing returned to the village. He came back empty-handed, weeping that he had lost all his capital and was now saddled with a mountain of debt. As he spoke, he took out a packet of rat poison and stirred it into the pot of hot porridge I had just finished cooking. He said with a smile that we would set off together, and be husband and wife again in our next life. In my past life, I believed his lies, with tears in my eyes. I fed the 2 children the hot porridge laced with rat poison, my own hands doing the deed alongside Su Hongxing. Then, I ate a large bowl of it myself. Su Hongxing said he would join us on the road to the underworld, but only after he had collected the bodies of me and my 2 children. Yet, I waited on that road to the underworld, waited and waited, for a full 30 years. What I finally got was the news that Su Hongxing had taken my inheritance, gone south to start a business, and amassed a fortune worth billions. I waited until he had taken 4 concubines and built a family with children and grandchildren filling his halls, yet he keeps insisting that his true love is still me, his first wife. I died with a grievance, my resentment soaring to the heavens, stubbornly refusing to be reincarnated. When I opened my eyes again, I heard the hypocritical sobs of Su Hongxing. Sume, I've wronged you. I've lost our entire family fortune. The debts we owe to the outside world, we couldn't pay them off in 10 lifetimes. I've made up my mind. Rather than have you and our son suffer a living hell with me, why don't we take the child and go together? I looked up in disbelief to see Su Hongxing holding a bowl of hot porridge laced with rat poison. He was about to feed it to our son. I flipped the table over in one swift motion and grabbed the iron ladle used for serving rice. Scooping up a large ladleful of hot porridge from the floor, I shoved it toward Su Hongxing's mouth. Fine, you eat first. Once you're dead and gone, the children and I will see to your corpse, then come find you on the road to the underworld. Su Hongxing was utterly shocked. He clamped his mouth shut, pushed himself off the ground with his hands, and scrambled backward several steps in a panic. I advanced step by step, a large iron ladle in hand, radiating a murderous aura like a vengeful spirit clawing its way out of the deepest pits of hell. Su Hongxing's pupils contracted, his face a mask of terror as he muttered under his breath, "He's lost it, completely lost it." Then he scrambled to his feet and fled out the door in a blind, terrified rush. Having narrowly escaped death, I collapsed into the muddy courtyard and wept uncontrollably. In my past life, I was utterly obedient to Su Hongxing, because he was the savior who rescued both my mother and me. Over a decade ago, my mother and I were sent down for re-education and nearly starved to death in a cowshed. Su Hongxing was the production team's swineherd, the man in charge of raising the pigs. Back when my mother and I were on the brink of starvation, it was Su Hongxing who, from the daily pot of cooked pig feed, secretly set aside a few sweet potatoes and potatoes, keeping my mother and me alive. Later, it was my mother's decision to marry me off to Su Hongxing. Years later, after my family's name was cleared, my mother, on her deathbed, personally handed the key to my dowry to Su Hongxing. She said, "Sume is too gentle. She likely couldn't protect such a vast fortune. Hongxing, my boy, in this life, I trust only you. I entrust Sume's dowry to you. I only ask that you protect Sume well, and the child in her womb." Sadly, my mother never knew, even unto her death, that the man she entrusted was not my true protector. He's a man-eating wolf. Su Hongxing returned soon after, trailed by a whole gaggle of his aunts and relatives. They crowded around me, all talking at once, trying to persuade me. "Sume, Hongxing has told us everything. He's racked up so much debt out there. If he doesn't divorce you, you and the child will be dragged into hiding with him. He's doing this for your own good." That's right. Sume, get a divorce, and fast. If we can save even one person, it's worth it. We can't have the whole family running from the debt collectors, can we? Do it for the child's sake. Once you're divorced, let Hongxing shoulder all the debt. You can take the child and find another man to marry. Through the crowd, I caught a glimpse of Su Hongxing. I can't believe his first scheme failed, and he's already come up with a second one so quickly. Is he trying to trick me into a divorce so he can run off with my dowry? No way. In this lifetime, I will find a way to get back the dowry my parents left for me. With that thought, I pinched my thigh hard, threw myself into Su Hongxing's arms, and burst into loud, heart-wrenching sobs. Hongxing, no matter how hard things get, I'll face it all with you. I don't want a divorce. Su Hongxing stiffened, feigning sorrow as he said, but all our family's money has been swindled, for the rest of our lives. Even if we wanted to turn things around, we have no capital left. I wiped my tears, grabbed his hand, and started pulling him toward the door. Come on, we're going to the police right now. That's a massive amount of money to be swindled out of. It's a major fraud case. The police won't just ignore it. In my past life, I was muddle-headed and had no idea how much money my parents had left for me. Later, after I became a vengeful spirit and followed Su Hongxing around, I only found out when I occasionally overheard him boasting to his 4 concubines. It turned out that the set of keys my mother had entrusted to Su Hongxing back then didn't just open a chest full of gold, silver, jewels, and antique paintings. There were also several large mansions in the provincial capital, along with dozens of commercial properties. If these assets were held on to and sold 30 years later, they would be worth at least 3 billion. No wonder, in her past life, Su Hongxing had used the excuse of business losses to gradually transfer out this entire dowry. He poisoned and killed the 3 of us, my children and me, right then and there. He's trying to wipe us out completely, to turn that enormous dowry into his own personal fortune. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became. I gripped Su Hongxing's arm and refused to let go. When he heard I was going to call the police, Su Hongxing's face changed. In a panic, he blurted out, "You can't call the police." "Why?" I demanded, my gaze fixed intently on him. The relatives chimed in, all talking at once to persuade him. "That's right, Hongxing, these swindlers are despicable. You must call the police." "Exactly, go and report it now. Those crooks might not have gotten far yet. If they're caught and the money is recovered, you might even be able to pay off your debts." Su Hongxing stammered, They're a bunch of gangsters. If we corner them, they might do something desperate and harm Sume and the 2 children." I quickly pointed at the coarse grain porridge spilled all over the floor, my face a mask of grief and indignation. "Hongxing, they've driven our whole family to the point of eating rat poison. I'm not even afraid of death anymore. So what else is there to fear? So you won't go to the police, is that it? Fine, I'll go myself." With that, I shoved my relative aside and bolted out the door. Su Hongxing was horrified and took off after me in hot pursuit, just as he was about to catch me. A flash of inspiration struck. I suddenly darted into the village broadcast station and locked the door behind me. Since I was good at writing and spoke better Mandarin than the other villagers, after my family's political rehabilitation, the village had put me in charge of being the broadcaster. After locking the door, I caught my breath, switched on the village loudspeaker, and announced loudly into the microphone, "Neighbors, fellow villagers, my husband, Su Hongxing, went to the provincial capital on business and was swindled out of a huge sum of money. My husband and I have decided that, starting now, we are offering a reward for information on the con artist. A reward of 10,000 yuan will be given to anyone who helps us catch the scammer and recover our savings. A reward of 5,000 yuan for information leading to the arrest of the scammer. A reward of 100 to 2,000 yuan for any tip on the scammer's whereabouts, even a single lead that helps us catch them." Back in 1985, there were hardly any households in our county with savings over 10,000 yuan. The news that my family was offering a 10,000 yuan reward for catching the scammer caused a sensation throughout the entire village. In an instant, Su Hongxing was completely surrounded by the villagers who had rushed over to claim the reward. In the middle of the crowd, Su Hongxing was sweating profusely with anxiety, desperately trying to explain, "Don't listen to Sume's nonsense. Where would my family get that kind of money? Yes, I went to the provincial capital on business and got swindled, but it's nowhere near the amount Sume is talking about. My family can't afford to give out a 10,000 yuan prize either. Don't let Sume fool you." Hearing Su Hongxing say this, the villagers' expressions turned sour. When they saw me approaching, they all started talking at once, accusing me of spinning lies and deceiving people. I quickly raised 3 fingers to the sky and swore, "The dowry my parents left me is worth far more than 10,000, it's easily over 1 million. I, Yen Sume, swear to heaven, if anyone can help me catch that damned swindler and get my dowry back, even if I can't come up with the cash, my dowry includes dozens of shops in the provincial capital, when the time comes, I'll use those provincial capital shops to cover that 10,000. The moment the words were spoken, the crowd erupted. That's a shop in the provincial capital. 10,000 yuan sounds like a lot, but it'll be spent sooner or later. Holding on to a shop in the provincial capital, something to pass down to your descendants, is like owning a goose that lays golden eggs. I watched with a cold, inward sneer as the villagers swarmed around Su Hongxing, pressing him for descriptions of the swindlers. Spin your tale. Let's see how you keep it up when the police get here. Seizing the moment while Su Hongxing was tied up by the villagers, I made a quick dash for the village committee office. The village had only one telephone, located in the committee office. This was where everyone came to make or receive calls. I paid 50 cents to make a call to the police station and report the incident. Upon hearing that this fraud case involved a staggering sum of 1 million yuan, the police station immediately dispatched officers, who took both me and Su Hongxing away. Su Hongxing was completely panicked, and the look he gave me was positively venomous. Yen Sume, you should know when to stop with your tall tales. This is a police station. Hurry up and explain to the officers, where on earth would our family get millions from? Under Su Hongxing's murderous glare, I nodded calmly. Officers, when I married Su Hongxing, I did bring a dowry worth millions with me. If you don't believe me, you can take a look at my dowry list. With that, I pulled a stack of yellowed rice paper from my bag. In my past life, it was only after I died that I learned the truth. My mother had, in the end, taken precautions against Su Hongxing. She had given the key to her dowry to Su Hongxing, but fearing he might one day change his heart, she hid the dowry list, along with the original deeds for the houses and shops in the provincial capital, in a secret compartment of my jewelry box. That jewelry box was one my father had made for me with his own hands before he passed away. My mother knew that even if dire circumstances forced me to sell all my jewelry, I would never part with that box. After my rebirth, I immediately retrieved these land deeds and the dowry list, keeping them close to my person all this time, just waiting for this moment. When I produced the dowry list, Su Hongxing looked as if he'd seen a ghost. Sume, how did you get this? Feigning innocence, I explained. My maiden family was once a prominent household. When a prominent family marries off a daughter, they always prepare a detailed dowry list because the trousseau is so substantial. I thought you knew, so I never mentioned it. Su Hongxing's face instantly turned ashen. His eyes darted around before he forced a smile and began to argue defensively. Sume, even the police need evidence to build a case. If you can just scribble something on a piece of paper and claim everything listed as your dowry, then by that logic, I could say the Forbidden City is my family heirloom. The police officer beside me also looked at me sternly. Comrade Yen Sume, you claim that everything listed here is the dowry that was swindled from you. Do you have any proof? Hearing the officer's words, a smug smile couldn't help but appear on Su Hongxing's face. He knew that my mother hadn't left me any evidence before she died, but was I really unable to produce any evidence? Officer, I have evidence, but I don't have it on me. You'll need to submit an official request to the government to retrieve it. What? Su Hongxing shot to his feet. I said calmly, in 1977, after our Yen family's name was cleared, the government stepped in on our behalf and helped us recover a great deal of our property in the provincial capital. Those houses and shops are all documented in the official papers the government returned to our family. It's all there in black and white if anyone cares to look. As I spoke, I glanced at Su Hongxing, a faint, mocking smile playing on my lips. Later, my husband said he wanted to start a business in the provincial capital. He used my dowry as seed money and ended up mortgaging all those houses and shops. Hongxing, you said your capital was swindled. You still have the documents for mortgaging the house and the shop, don't you? Hurry up and show them to the police. Su Hongxing was sweating profusely. I sneered inwardly. After my death in my past life, my vengeful spirit lingered, haunting Su Hongxing. I knew he never actually mortgaged the houses and shops from my dowry. Instead, he secretly transferred the deeds into his mistress's name, and as fate would have it, this mistress turned out to be an old acquaintance of both mine and Su Hongxing's. Faced with the police, the usually silver-tongued Su Hongxing was so flustered he couldn't utter a single word. The evasive, guilty look was full of tells to the seasoned eyes of the public security officers. The officers exchanged a glance, their expressions growing serious, feigning ignorance. I stood by, urging him on with an anxious look. Hongxing, the dowry my parents left me is no small sum. If they find out who swindled it, it's a firing squad offense. Hurry up and tell the officers, who was it that swindled you? What did they look like? Su Hongxing hemmed and hawed, refusing to speak. The police immediately took him to a separate interrogation room. When they came out again, the officers' eyes were full of pity when they looked at me. They advised me to take the child and go home first to wait for news. I pretended to be worried about my husband, insisting on waiting for him so we could go home together. The public security officer sighed. Comrade Yan, I'm afraid Su Hongxing won't be going home with you. He is suspected of involvement in a fraud case. We are going to apprehend his accomplices now. The police didn't keep me waiting long. That very evening, Lin Chunfeng was brought back in custody. It turned out she had been hiding in the provincial capital the whole time, still living in a fool's paradise. Because Su Hongxing had long promised her that once he had gotten rid of me and the child, he would marry her. You know, I actually saved Lin Chuanfeng's life once. Her parents favored sons over daughters and forced her to take her brother's place, sending her down to the countryside as an educated youth. In her first year there, she contracted tuberculosis. With no money for treatment, she nearly died at the youth settlement. I felt sorry for her, so I secretly used my own money to get her to a county hospital. That's how she pulled through. Later, when the educated youth were allowed to return to the cities, all the others who had connections managed to leave. Lin Chuanfeng's family had abandoned her. It was I who took pity on her. I gave Su Hongxing money to pull some strings and buy her a spot to return to the city. When she was leaving, Lin Chunfeng wept and swore she would repay my kindness in this lifetime, even if it meant working like a beast of burden. I never imagined that the way Lin Chunfeng would repay me was by having an affair with my husband. You even wanted me dead. Why? I stared at her, utterly bewildered. Lin Chunfeng knew she couldn't escape. She glared at me, her face full of resentment. Why? That's exactly what I want to ask. Why does everything go your way? Your parents dote on you, your man adores you, and you're rolling in money. What makes you so special? Thank heavens for divine justice. Your parents are dead, and now your man and your money are all mine. Ahahaha. I let out a cold laugh. You can have that scumbag Su Hongxing if you want him, but as for the dowry my parents left me, don't you dare dream of getting your hands on it. After Lin Chunfeng was arrested, the police swiftly seized the illicit assets. All the properties and shops she and Su Hongxing had secretly transferred, along with the gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, and paintings stored in the bank's safe deposit boxes, were returned to me, the victim. After retrieving my dowry, I never went back to the village. After that last reward offer, I had already shown my wealth in the village. If people found out I'd actually recovered a dowry worth a fortune, just think how many would try to take advantage of a woman alone in the village with 2 children. Being taken advantage of would be one thing, but if we ran into desperate criminals willing to kill for money, my children and I probably wouldn't make it out alive. So, after retrieving my dowry from the Public Security Bureau, I immediately went to several different banks and, in batches, deposited all the valuable gold, silver, jewelry, antiques, and paintings into safe deposit boxes. I also rented out all the houses and shops. From then on, the monthly rent alone would be enough to support me and my 2 children. I even spent a fair amount of money and pulled some strings to rent an apartment in the Public Security Bureau's residential compound. The compound is right next door to the bureau itself, and it's filled with police officers and their families. It's much safer than living in the village. The Su family showed up right after I had just settled in with the child. The moment we met, Su Hongxing's grandparents knelt down before me. Su Hongxing's biological father died young, and his mother remarried early on, so he was raised by his grandparents from childhood. The elderly couple pleaded through tears, saying Su Hongxing now realized his mistake, and begged me to forgive him and give him another chance. For the child's sake, sue me. Hongxing just made a mistake any man could make. It's that bitch Lin Chunfeng who led him astray. That's right. We went to the detention center, and Hongxing told us everything. He said all those things were Lin Chunfeng's ideas from behind the scenes. He was forced into it. I let out a cold laugh. And was he forced into having an affair with Lin Chunfeng? Forced into sharing a bed with her too? Hongxing said Lin Chunfeng deliberately drugged him and then threatened him. She said if he didn't divorce you, she'd go to the police station and accuse him of rape. Hongxing was afraid of going to jail. That's how she got her leverage over him. Exactly. It's all that bitch Lin Chuanfeng's fault. Sume, you go tell the police right now. Tell them to execute Lin Chunfeng and get Hongxing released immediately. That's right, as the saying goes, young couples grow old together as companions. You and Hongxing are the original husband and wife. What kind of grudge between spouses lasts overnight? I was so angry I could only laugh. Su Hongxing bought rat poison to kill me and our 2 children. And you're still telling me spouses don't hold grudges overnight? Fine. Since every single one of you is so kind and magnanimous, come on then. I rushed into the security office of the residential compound, borrowed a plastic bucket from the guard, and filled it halfway with water. Then I ran to the small shop across the street and bought 2 large packets of rat poison. In front of all the Su family relatives, I poured both entire packets of rat poison into the water bucket and stirred it thoroughly. Then, I took out a brand new enamel mug, scooped up a mugful of the poisoned water, and offered it to the Su family. Come on, if every single one of you drinks a bowl of water laced with rat poison today, I'll forgive Su Hongxing. I held the enamel mug and advanced step by step. The Su family recoiled in terror, even the elderly Su couple, who moments ago were wailing and swearing they'd rather die if only I'd forgive their son, scrambled to their feet and bolted away in a flash. I chased after them, laughing like a maniac. See? They only understand the pain when the knife cuts their own flesh, they only know fear when the rat poison is in their own bowl. I refused to forgive him, and with no other recourse, Su Hongxing attempted suicide multiple times in the detention center, threatening to see me. I went out of my way to get a new perm, then headed to the department store to buy a brand new wool coat. When I arrived at the detention center, dressed to the nines, Su Hongxing's eyes instantly welled up with tears. Clad in prison garb, he shook his head desperately, his face a picture of wretchedness. No, it shouldn't be like this. How did it come to this? It wasn't like this in my past life at all. Yen Sume, why did you stop loving me all of a sudden? Why won't you give me the dowry? Why didn't you eat that bowl of porridge laced with rat poison? Why? I sat down, looked at him through the iron bars, and said, enunciating each word slowly, so it seems you've been reborn too. So you must remember now, in our past life, I and our 2 children really did eat that pot of porridge laced with rat poison. Su Hongxing, how dare you have the nerve to ask me why I don't love you in this life? Let me tell you why. Because the Yen Sume who once loved you, the Yen Sume who trusted you implicitly, has been dead for a long time. You killed her with your own hands in our past life. Su Hongxing's face turned deathly pale as he collapsed into the cold chair. Seeing him so utterly devastated filled me with immense satisfaction, and I continued, I came here today to tell you, Su Hongxing, that no matter what you say, I will never, ever forgive you in this lifetime. Furthermore, I've already changed Debao and Erbao's surname. From now on, they are descendants of the Yen family, and they have absolutely nothing to do with your Su family. Even after you're dead, they won't mourn for you or visit your grave. Oh. And I'll tell the children exactly how you tried to poison them with rat poison. They'll hate you for the rest of their lives and never forgive you. Su Hongxing shook his head desperately. No, Yen Sume, you can't do this to me. Debao and Erbao are my children too. My gaze was sharp as a blade, wishing I could flay him alive. So now you know they were your own flesh and blood, that day, when you personally fed Debao and Erbao the rat poison. Why didn't it occur to you that they were your own flesh and blood? Su Hongxing, for money, you murdered your wife and children. You are utterly devoid of conscience. You deserve to die childless and without a grave to rest in. After that day, I never went back to the detention center, but Su Hongxing, as if possessed, wrote to me with a desperate frenzy. In his letters, he wept, admitting he was wrong and begging me for another chance. But in our past life, he never gave me or our child a chance either. A month later, the verdict was handed down. Su Hongxing was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder and large-scale fraud. Lin Chunfeng, as an accomplice, was sentenced to 5 years in prison. After the verdict was announced, Su Hongxing once again requested to see me. I refused. Then Su Hongxing sent me a message. If I would agree to see him one last time, he would consent to the divorce. When we met again, Su Hongxing had shaved his head and was wearing a prison uniform. In that dazed moment, it was as if I caught a glimpse of a past life. In that previous life, after I died, my vengeful spirit lingered, haunting Su Hongxing's every step. I watched him take my dowry, build a successful business, and step by step become a billionaire. I watched him take one concubine after another, father a brood of children, and live a life of utter luxury and comfort. My 2 children and I have been dead for 30 years, with no one to burn us paper money or clothes. We wander the underworld in tattered rags, yet he, in the world of the living, is draped in fine silks and satins, feasts on delicacies, and has a wardrobe overflowing with luxury brands. In this life, I'll make sure he gets a real taste of what it's like to be destitute and dressed in rags. When we met again, Su Hongxing only asked me one question, Sume, when did you get back? I smiled. The very moment you picked up that bowl and told me to drink the rat poison. What a coincidence, isn't it? Just a little more, and your vile scheme with Lin Chunfeng would have succeeded, Su Hongxing said to me, his eyes red and his face contorted in anguish. Sume, believe it or not, I truly regretted it in my past life. I spent a lifetime in remorse, hating myself for being so bewitched and deluded that I tricked you and our child into taking that rat poison. I couldn't help but sneer. So, you went ahead and married 4 concubines while claiming to regret it, then proceeded to have child after child with them. That's a pretty cheap kind of regret. Su Hongxing lowered his head in shame. After a long pause, he finally murmured, but in our past life, didn't you and the children already get your revenge on me? Sumi, you have no idea. After you all died in my past life, I never had a single peaceful night's sleep again, especially when I grew old, every night. The moment I closed my eyes, I would see you coming for me with your 2 children, demanding my life. You were bleeding from all your orifices, weeping and saying how terribly you died, that I must pay in blood for what I owed. Night after sleepless night, whenever I saw a woman who looked like you, I would think to myself, if only this were your reincarnation. I married one woman after another, and each one looked just like you. I had them bear many children, thinking that our 2 children, who died with such regret, would surely be reborn into our family. Sumai, in our past life, I truly believed that you and the children had long since reincarnated. I thought you might be one of them. I fathered so many children with those women. Among them, there must have been a Debao and an Erbao. You've all been reincarnated, so why won't you just leave me alone? I suddenly laughed, a laugh like a vengeful wraith clawing its way up from the deepest pit of hell. I leaned in close to Su Hongxing and asked him, word by deliberate word, you're right, Su Hongxing. In our past life, my 2 children and I died a horrible death. For 30 long years, our vengeful spirits have never left you. We've been haunting you all this time. Su Hongxing jerked his head up, staring at me with sheer terror on his face. I left, laughing loudly. A few days later, I received a phone call from the prison. Su Hongxing left a suicide note and, while in prison, used a sharpened toothbrush to pierce his carotid artery. Next, let's listen to the next story. I time-traveled and became my mother's classmate. The year was 1985. It was in this very year that my mother, for a bride price of 1,000 yuan, dropped out of school and married my father. Fortunately, their youthful love was true, and they shared a period of great sweetness. Later, I came along. For this journey through time, my backpack is stuffed with cash. I'm going to break them up. As I walked towards the time capsule, a curious voice called out from behind me, aren't you afraid you'll regret this? If this works, you'll be gone. I just smiled, adjusted the pack on my back with finality, and strode inside. I arrived at class 2, grade 12 as a transfer student. The moment I stepped into the classroom, my gaze was drawn to a girl with her head bowed, absorbed in a book. I knew instantly, it was Ms. Yuruyue in her youth. She wore 2 long braids and a pink dacron blouse, petite and graceful. She was in the full bloom of her youth. At the sound, her clear, almond-shaped eyes turned, and a gentle smile instantly lit up her face. Back then, she was still a girl who loved to laugh. The daily grind had not yet dimmed the light in her eyes. How wonderful! Holding back the tears in my eyes, I gave her a big smile in return. She was taken aback for a moment, then her eyes and brows softened into a gentle curve. I turned around to address the whole class and introduce myself. Hello everyone, I'm Ding Yi, the new transfer student. The homeroom teacher nodded, scanned the classroom, and pointed to the window seat in the 3rd row. Yuruyue, let Ding Yi share a desk with you. As the class life committee member, please look after the new student. Her deskmate was a tall, lanky boy who had been quietly sleeping with his head on the desk. Upon hearing the teacher's arrangement, he shot up from his seat, jostling the desk and chair with a loud creak. Teacher, what about me? The teacher clearly didn't want to see him. Su Zhao, get to the back of the class. You're a senior in high school and still fooling around all day. Don't disturb Ryu's studies. The boy shot me a glare, dragged his backpack, and slammed it onto a desk in the back row with a loud clatter. I ignored him and instead walked slowly over to Yurue, carefully taking a seat beside her. Her face still held the same kind, gentle smile. Only then did I feel a wave of relief. A surge of joy washed over me, yet I felt an overwhelming urge to burst into tears. 5 years have passed. I finally traveled through time and saw her again. It was the midday break. I made an excuse, saying I still had some things to sort out. I entered the empty classroom and began to cry, muffling my sobs. Just as my eyes had swollen from crying, a foot kicked my desk. The new transfer student who needs looking after. What are you doing alone in the classroom? The desk jolted, making me stumble. I looked up in a daze, my face streaked with tears. Su Zhao put his leg down and rubbed his nose. Sorry about that, I sobbed. It's okay. After saying that, I lowered my head and continued crying. Su Zhao hesitated for a moment and, at some point, slipped away. When I finally stopped crying, I saw a blue-checked handkerchief, neatly folded on the table. In the afternoon, Ms. Yurue noticed my eyes and asked me quietly, "Did Su Zhao bully you?" I shook my head, looking at her longingly, and said, "I'm just homesick. Don't be afraid. If anyone bullies you, tell me, and I'll give them a good thrashing for you." She noticed me staring intently at her. Her eyes crinkled into a smile. "Don't let my slim build fool you. I'm actually quite strong." Of course, I knew she was strong. She raised me well from a young age. By the age of 6, I was already a plump, fair-skinned little dumpling. That year, I secretly followed the older girl next door up the mountain to gather chestnuts. With my short legs and a mind for play, I got separated from the group on the mountain and lost my way. She was the one who searched the mountain for half the night, found me, and carried me all the way home. Her back felt so steady and secure on those miles of mountain road. Ms. Yurue ended up seeking out Su Zhao after all. I don't know if it was her words that did the trick, or if he was spooked by my tears that day. Su Zhao settled down a great deal after that. He didn't give me any trouble and went back to his old habit of sleeping in class. I don't know what his relationship is with the young Ms. Yurue. I always got the feeling they were somewhat close, but I searched every corner of my memory. I've never had an Uncle Su in my life. I decided to ask her directly, "Do you like Su Zhao?" Ms. Yurue quickly looked around to make sure no one could hear us. Then, with a playful scold, she patted my shoulder. What nonsense are you talking about? How could I possibly like him?" I shrugged. I have to say, that slap really stung. Seems like she was telling the truth. Worried I might overthink it, she explained. "Su Zhao's family situation is a bit unusual. I've helped him out a few times." She didn't go into further detail, as it concerned Su Zhao's privacy, but knowing that is enough. She's in her final year of high school now, and I don't want her to like anyone. I just want her to get into a good university and change her own destiny. I don't want her to meet someone like her father and get married too young. Mom, I nearly bit my own tongue off. The college entrance exam is coming up. Have you thought about which university you'd like to go to? A teaching college, I guess. Your grades are clearly excellent. You could have gotten into a much better school. Ms. Yurue was quite frank about it, but the teacher's college was tuition-free, and they even guaranteed job placement. Just think, over 20 years later. There are tons of people trying to become teachers. Even Ms. Yurue, in her middle age, once earnestly advised me to take the civil service or public institution exams. In that moment, I realized that young Yurue's goal was both simple and pragmatic. That's my mom for you, always so far-sighted. Autumn was gradually settling in. A sense of anxiety slowly began to creep over me. All I know is that it was a day of heavy, swirling snow. My grandfather was hospitalized with a serious illness. He was just a community-funded teacher at a township primary school, and his salary was very low. It was barely enough to cover my mother's education and the family's basic expenses. His illness quickly ate through most of the family's savings. Grandma had to stay at the hospital to care for him. My aunt could only take on odd jobs while looking after my 3-year-old uncle. Money soon became very tight. My mother had no choice but to drop out of school during the critical final year of high school. She accepted the 1,000 yuan betrothal gift my father offered in advance. 2 years later, she married him. I don't know the exact time when my grandfather fell ill. I was worried that even with enough money, unforeseen circumstances could arise and jeopardize my objective, to have Ms. Yurue's life repeat the same mistakes. I became somewhat apprehensive and indecisive. It was Ms. Yurue who first noticed my unusual state. Perhaps it's the bond of blood. Even though she doesn't know I'm her daughter, She treats me with great affection and is remarkably perceptive of my feelings, and without that mother-daughter relationship between us, she isn't burdened with the role of mom. You don't have to be responsible for other people's lives, nor do you need to bend over backwards to accommodate them. She's just a simple, innocent girl who can freely share her hobbies and habits. I was surprised to discover we actually have a lot in common. Sometimes, looking at her, I feel as if I'm seeing a version of myself. This is because I am considerably older than the present-day Ms. Yuruyue. Having also weathered the baptism of the information explosion era, I often have unique insights that can help clear her doubts. Mrs. Yuruyue and I grew closer by the day. In my dealings with her, I found myself feeling a touch of the same concern a middle-aged Mrs. You might have. Are you worried about your studies? I shook my head absent-mindedly. So, you're missing your family? I paused, my gaze settling on Madame Yuruyue's almond-shaped eyes. Madame Yuruyue had almond eyes, peach blossom cheeks, and petal-like lips. Hers was a delicate and striking beauty, yet tempered with a distinct air of scholarly refinement, utterly captivating. No wonder Dad was willing to pay the dowry early just to marry her. My parents split up. Neither of them can come back, I said, looking down. Ms. Yuruyue quickly wrapped her arms around me. It's okay. It's okay, you still have me. She asked me, if you can't go home for Mid-Autumn Festival, you should come spend it with my family. I looked up at her. Being able to see her again was something I had to scheme and strive for. If only I could see Grandma and Grandpa one more time. To see my eldest aunt before she was married and my uncle when he was just a boy, that was a luxury I never dared to dream of. Before I came here, my maternal grandparents had already passed away. My youngest uncle also passed away due to illness. Only my eldest aunt remained, utterly worn out from the constant clashes with her husband. Because I was a girl, and the only child in my family, I was never given much importance in my grandparents' house, where there were plenty of grandsons. I spent my childhood at my grandmother's house. My uncle, who was 7 years older than me, acted like I was a total nuisance. Yet, he still took me exploring every creek and hill around our town. Those were the happiest days of my life. I had originally thought to take care of them quietly during Grandpa's illness, but if I could be part of their lives again and relive those vivid memories, I would be more than willing. And once I'm closer with Grandpa and Grandma, it would be easier to remind him to take care of his health. It would be even better if we could nip it in the bud. I took her hand and said, Ms. Yuruyue, you must let me go. Ms. Yuruyue went back home for the weekend break. I eagerly headed to the mall with the money in my pocket. I'm going to buy a gift. I went to the watch counter first and bought a Longines watch. When I was little, I overheard my aunt and my mom chatting. My aunt really wanted a lady's watch. It's a shame my uncle's family was poor, and both their salaries were low. The only piece of metal jewelry you could find on his entire person was his belt buckle. My aunt always regretted this and remembered it for many years. Next, I headed to the toy section. I've never been married and have had very little interaction with children. I was dazzled by the array of toys on the shelves and couldn't decide what gifts to pick. But when he was little, my youngest uncle was always green with envy over other kids' toy guns. He even carved one himself out of wood, kept it tucked in his school bag, and treasured it dearly. He would only let me play with it for a little while, and only if I was behaving, so I bought him a toy gun. The kind that shoots plastic pellets. After a moment's thought, I also picked up a remote control car for him. I just know he's going to love it. As for his grandma and grandpa, I didn't get them anything. I knew they wouldn't just accept a gift their daughter's classmate had paid for without a good reason. As I approached the clothing store on the second floor, a loud commotion reached my ears. A crowd had gathered, pointing and whispering among themselves. A woman's shrill voice was screaming, Su Zhao, your father and I are kindly taking you shopping for clothes. Is this the attitude you're going to give us? You turn your nose up at this one, you turn your nose up at that one. The only ones you like are the expensive ones. Do you think your father's money grows on trees? Hearing the name Su Zhao, I walked over curiously. There he was, just as I expected. His lanky, 6-foot-plus frame towered over the crowd, a mocking smile playing on his lips. He stood there, utterly nonchalant. It was as if the person being accused was someone else entirely. He lifted his chin, refusing to look at the heavily made-up woman with permed hair beside him. He said to the man who stood silent in the crowd, What, just because my mother's gone, I can't even buy a down jacket? The man said nothing. Su Zhao snorted coldly and walked away without another word. I squeezed through the crowd and picked up the down jacket that Su Zhao had just tried on. How much is it? The sales assistant, also feeling awkward about what had just happened, hurried over when she heard my question. 200 yuan, miss, it's really not expensive, look how thick the down filling is. I felt the thick down jacket in my hands, then glanced at the woman's cashmere coat, and could only think how bitterly ironic it was. It's so cheap, wrap it up for me. Carrying the clothes, I threw out a scornful remark before leaving. You have money to buy a cashmere coat for a woman, but you're too cheap to spend 200 bucks on winter clothes for your own child. Well, it takes all sorts. The woman, upon hearing my words, started shouting and threatening to come hit me. What are you talking about? What's it got to do with you? A little girl like you. The man stopped her and snapped in a low voice. Enough already. Aren't you embarrassed enough? I ignored the woman's muttered curses and walked straight out, but once outside the mall, I found myself in a bit of a bind. How could I give these clothes to Su Zhao in a way that felt natural, so he could accept them without any awkwardness? I thought about it for a moment, but couldn't come up with a good plan. The whole situation struck me as rather amusing. Who knows how much longer I'll be around in this world? Why bother worrying about all that? It's better to fulfill my wishes and spend the money I brought with me before I'm gone. That's better than anything. What's the harm in just giving it to him directly? No one will remember me after I'm gone anyway. I found an ordinary bag, put the watch and toys inside, and carefully placed it in the cabinet. I went to find Su Zhao, carrying the bag of clothes. He was sitting at the edge of the sports field, hands braced behind him, staring expressionlessly at the clouds in the sky. I sat down beside him and placed the bag in front of him. He gave a self-deprecating laugh. So you saw all that, new kid, Su Zhao. It's really not a big deal. It's not our fault we can't choose our parents, right? His eyes were rimmed with red, but he said nothing. I watched the clouds with him. I have no parents left. But I have money, if you're ever in trouble. Come to me, consider it a loan. When you have money in the future, you can pay me back double. Su Zhao tightened his grip on the bag of clothes. All right, he said, and so, the days passed in their orderly, predictable way. I kept urging Ms. Yuruyue to apply herself to her studies. I was constantly by her side, keeping a vigilant watch, to keep irrelevant people and matters from disturbing her. Worried she wasn't getting proper nutrition, using the excuse of having her tutor me. I made sure she drank a bottle of fresh milk every day. Before I knew it, Su Zhao's clothes hung loose on her frame, and she drifted about all day like a reed in the wind. My heart softened, so I ordered a fresh milk subscription for him too. My life right now is like being a mom, but without the hard parts. I get to experience the daily worries of a doting mother. Later, I found out that Xu Zhao had a huge fight with his father. He stopped going home. That woman got into his father's head, and he cut off his already meager allowance, so I just took charge of everything and started covering all 3 meals a day for both of them. The 3 of us did everything together, coming and going, eating and drinking, became a delightful sight in class 2, grade 12. Fortunately, our homeroom teacher saw us as well behaved. Even Su Zhao started to hit the books along with us. He didn't really say anything about it. Su Zhao was one thing, meticulously recording every single food and drink expense in a dedicated notebook. He even noted down the day I gave him half an apple. Ms. Yuruyue, on the other hand, operated on the principle that one is beholden to those who feed them. Not only did she spend all her living expenses on me, but she also launched into a frenzied mode of tutoring me. In the dead of night, I bit down on my blanket, tears streaming down my face, utterly heartbroken. I never imagined I'd have to go through it all over again, and on top of that, I had to endure the intense, high-pressure study schedule before the college entrance exams. But it was also that Ms. Yuruyue could accept my kindness with a clear conscience. I could only grit my teeth and push on, driving each other forward with her. We lived each day in a state of agonizing intensity. Thankfully, the Mid-Autumn Festival was almost here. That was the only thing keeping me going. But then, the unexpected happened. Ms. Yuruyue encountered a young Lao Ding. I'm not clear on the details of how Ms. Yuruyue and Lao Ding first met all those years ago. When I asked about it as a child, they would exchange a glance and smile, saying it all began with a dowry of 1,000 yuan. When I asked again, they just pursed their lips, patted my head, and said, "You're too young to understand," leaving it at that. Later on, they grew to resent each other, and their names were scarcely mentioned in conversation. I had always assumed they had no connection before they got married, but it turns out they had known each other for so long. On her way back to school after the weekend, Ms. Yuruyue had her leg grazed by a tricycle. The rider was an elderly person with a child. Ms. You chose not to hold him accountable. She was escorted back to school by a kind bystander. Comrade Lao Ding, upon hearing that Ms. Yuruyue was injured, I grabbed Su Zhao and rushed out. Right at the school gate, we ran into a young Lao Ding supporting Ms. Yuruyue. They stood side by side, a handsome man and a beautiful woman, an unexpectedly harmonious pair. Their figures slowly merged with the memories from my youth. I froze for a moment, my eyes grew hot, and tears just started streaming down. Ms. Yuruyue simply thought I was worried about her. She hopped over to me on one foot. I'm fine, don't cry. I simply pulled her into a hug and sobbed, you scared me to death. Despite her own leg injury, Ms. Yuruyue focused only on comforting me. In the end, it was the ever-present busybody, Comrade Lao Ding, who couldn't stand to watch any longer. Hey, kid, Yuruyue has hurt her leg, don't hang all over her and add to her burden. I quietly let go of my grip and let Ms. Yuruyue lean on me instead. Thank you, comrade, we'll be on our way. With that, and without waiting for his reaction, she quickly signaled to Su Zhao, and they escorted Madame Yuruyue away. I couldn't take the risk. I couldn't allow Madame Yuruyue and Comrade Lao Ding to have any further contact. To be honest, Comrade Lao Ding wasn't tall, just over 1.7 meters, but he did have a handsome face. Old Ding's eyes weren't the classic phoenix shape, but their slender, upturned corners gave him a perpetually soulful look whenever he gazed at someone. What's more, Old Ding had clearly put in some effort today. Dressed in a sharp little jacket with his hair slicked back, he cut quite the dashing figure. I was afraid Ms. Yuruyue might be swayed. I said to Ms. Yuruyue with great seriousness, you mustn't fall for him, because your life is going to be a hard one. Ms. Yuruyue didn't have a shred of awareness about the situation, and even gave me a pat on the back. What on earth are you thinking about all day? That's completely off base. Ding Mozhan was just doing me a favor by giving me a ride back to school. What are you even talking about? Look, he's already here. That definitely means he's interested. Ms. Yuruyue, if you're that desperate to date someone, you might as well go for Su Zhao. I grabbed a bewildered Su Zhao and pulled him over. Just look at him, tall, long legs, handsome with fine features. His grades are the only thing lacking. Otherwise he's perfect. Ms. Yuruyue was mortified, limping. She pulled the blushing Su Zhao from my grasp. She then saw him out the door. Afterwards, she asked me, this is your first time meeting Ding Mozhan. Do you really have such a poor impression of him already? I was momentarily speechless. Is Comrade Lao Ding not a good man? Of course not. Comrade Lao Ding is a man of strong moral integrity, considerate and kind-hearted. He has always been spoken of as a good person. Even though his marriage to Madame Yuruyue ended in nothing but a complete mess, but he was always a good father. He would hold me in his arms and patiently tell me stories. He would take me hiking and teach me the name of every plant. He would pick me up in the pouring rain, racing me home to see who was faster. He would intercept the classmate who bullied me on the way home from school and give him a good thrashing. He would also tease and joke with me, sharing drinks and heartfelt conversations. He never even raised his voice at me, always treating me with meticulous care and gentleness. He truly is a good father. The only time he ever raised his voice at me, the only time he was truly angry with me, was because I urged him to agree to a divorce from Ms. Yuruyue. Back then, with red-rimmed eyes, he looked at me with such disappointment and said, other children try to reconcile their parents, not drive them apart. Do you really not want your mother and me to be happy together? Remembering this, my heart ached with a sharp, piercing pain. Old Ding never did agree to divorce Ms. Yuruyue in the end. Even though they had long been separated and had cut off all contact, they remained husband and wife until death. I finally found an excuse. I was afraid you'd get distracted and your studies would suffer. Ms. Yuruyue put her arm around my shoulder and assured me, don't worry, I will definitely get into university. Besides, Ding Mozhan and I just met for the first time today. We barely know each other's names. It's not even a remote possibility yet, so there's no need for you to worry about it. I nodded. I had overreacted. It's just that seeing old Ding made me feel a bit guilty, that's all. Comrade Ding has always hoped I would help preserve his marriage to Ms. Yuruyue. Last time, I let him down. This time, I'm dead set on breaking them apart. The Mid-Autumn Festival arrived all the same. I happily packed my clothes and gifts, planning to go back to Ms. Yuruyue's place for a couple of days, but I never expected Su Zhao to tag along in the end. His reason was perfectly sound. He couldn't go home. to make matters worse, the whole school was on break, the cafeteria was closed, and he had nowhere to eat. It wasn't like the future, where snack shops and food stalls would be on every corner, while there were a few food stands and small eateries around. They were all quite far from the school, even the few restaurants in town were beyond Suzhou's financial reach. In the end, Ms. Yuruyue gritted her teeth, made a firm decision, and took both of us home with her. I met my maternal grandparents. They were still quite young, standing tall and straight with thick, jet-black hair, because Ms. Yuruyue had mentioned earlier that she would be bringing a classmate home. They had the room all tidied up early, just waiting for us to arrive. Suzhou greeted her parents warmly and confidently, introducing himself. After wrestling with it for a long time, I finally said, "Hello, Mr. Yu, Mrs. Lon, I'm Ding Yi, a classmate of Ms. Yuruyue." Grandma and Grandpa exchanged a glance, their eyes twinkling with amusement. Grandma took my hand, looked me over for a moment, then led Ms. Yuruyue forward. Yeah, your classmate here looks so much like you. Had I not known better, I wouldn't have been able to tell you two apart from a distance. I could only smile and say, Ms. Yuruyue and I, it's a connection written in the stars. Just then, my uncle came running out, still a little short-legged sprout at the time. He clung to my grandmother's leg and said, "Mom, I'm hungry." Grandma called out to us, / "You kids play first, I'll go start dinner. Old Sue, come give me a hand, / Ms. Yuruyue picked up the little one, / Ruchao. "Did you miss your second sister, / little uncle said in a tiny, milky voice, / I missed second sister, / I looked at my little uncle's chubby cheeks, so plump and tender, you couldn't help but want to give them a pinch. That's just adorable. Ms. Yuruyue teased little uncle. Say brother and sister. Little uncle, the tiny tot, sweetly called out to Suzhou, brother. After that, he looked at me, and I quickly tried to stop him. No need to call me big sister. Just call me Ee. That won't do, a child should be polite. Call her big sister. I was at a loss for words. If my little uncle started being polite, then I'd be the rude one. I looked earnestly at Ms. Yuruyue, who was insisting that my little uncle call me big sister. Ms. Yuruyue, I really don't like being called big sister. Just use my name, okay? Ms. Yuruyue thought for a moment. Alright, Ruchao, call her Ding Yi. Ding Yi. Uncle Doubting's soft, little voice was so pleasant to hear. I carefully took him into my arms and held him close. He nestled obediently against my shoulder. That embrace brought tears to my eyes. I grew up at my grandmother's house, so you could say my little uncle and I were practically raised together. The depth of my feelings was beyond measure. In the days after his passing, I was utterly distraught, often waking in the middle of the night, choked with sobs. I shifted my hold on him, turning him away so that neither Madame Yuruyue nor Suzhou could see my tears. Once I had composed myself, I carried my little uncle into the room and handed him the toy gun and the little car. Do you like it? Little Uncle Doubting's eyes lit up. He couldn't put the toy gun down, running his hands over it. Then he pushed the little car along the bed a few times. It was obvious he was delighted, yet, he carefully handed the gun and car back to me, his gaze still glued to them, and whispered a refusal. Mom says I'm not allowed to take things from other people, but I'm not other people. I whispered to soothe him, it's me, Ding Yi. We're the very best of friends. After wrestling with it for a long while, little uncle called for Madame Yuruyue, second sister. Ding Yi wants to give me a gift. May I accept it? Madame Yuruyue instinctively moved to refuse, but seeing the torn gift box, she frowned. This is far too generous. I know you have money, but you should still be careful with it. You can't just throw it around like this. It won't happen again. I just like little Ruchao so much. Consider it a welcome gift. Ms. Yuruyue strongly disapproved of my actions, but since the items couldn't be returned, she had no choice but to accept them. In the evening, my aunt, Ms. Surushi, returned home. She wore a floral print blouse and black trousers. Moving with an air of capable efficiency, upon seeing Suzhou and me, she promptly came over to greet us. The four of us hit it off right away. Meanwhile, my little uncle was running after the toy car in the yard, having the time of his life. Before we knew it, the sky began to darken. Grandpa set up the table in the yard and called us over for dinner. The courtyard was filled with a joyful atmosphere, with people washing their hands, carrying dishes, and laughing playfully. A deep sense of contentment washed over me. Looking up, I saw the full moon, round as a plate, with a gentle breeze whispering by. It truly was an exceptionally beautiful mid-autumn night. After the Mid-Autumn Festival, our schoolwork became much heavier. Su Zhao also started to put in the effort, began to study, and stopped sleeping in class. Apart from urging Madame Yu Ruyue to write more letters and reminding Teacher Yu to take care of his health, our days were busy yet fulfilling. When Ms. Yu Ruyue went home, Su Zhao and I would sometimes tag along. Ms. Yu and Ms. Lan treated us with a special fondness, almost like we were their own nephews. They would often cook delicious meals for the two of us. They even made a set of padded cotton jackets and trousers for each of us, finely stitched, perfectly fitted, warm, and not the least bit bulky. The very day he received it, Su Zhao proudly put it on and wore it until he was drenched in sweat, only then reluctantly taking it off. After we got to know each other better, they also asked about my parents. I said sadly that they were no longer with me. Then, Su Zhao followed suit, declaring in a loud, clear voice, "My parents are gone too." Ms. Yu Ruyue and I exchanged a sidelong glance, to which he merely raised an eyebrow at us with an air of complete nonchalance. Given his family circumstances, we decided not to call him out on it. As a result, Ms. Lan felt even more sympathy and affection for us. Even our aunt, Ms. Yu Rushi, remarked with a laugh that it was as if the family had gained two more younger siblings. That day, Ms. Yu Ruyue and I went out to buy some daily necessities. Quite unexpectedly, we ran into Comrade Lao Ding again. I noticed his blue work clothes were neat and clean, his hair slicked back with pomade. He was all spruced up. I strongly suspect he was lying in wait, and his target was none other than Ms. Yu Ruyue. Old Ding's face lit up with a smile the moment he saw us. "Miss Yu Ruyue, how is your leg? Is it better now?" With an easy familiarity, Old Ding walked over to Miss Yu Ruyue's side. "Last time, you left in such a hurry and didn't leave a mailing address, so I couldn't write to ask how you were." In those days, economic growth wasn't as rapid as it would later become. In the underdeveloped small towns, it had only been in the last decade or so that people had secured their basic food and shelter. Telephones were scarce, and people relied more on writing letters to stay in touch. I let out a soft, derisive snort. "You managed to track us down without even knowing our address. Imagine what you could do if you had it." Ms. Yu Ruyue patted my hand calmly and said with a smile, "Brother Ding, I haven't had the chance to thank you for last time. Let me treat you to a meal today." "Oh, you really shouldn't have. It was nothing, just a small favor." Old Ding's eyes crinkled at the corners, and a shameless grin instantly spread across his face. "But it is lunchtime. I know a little noodle shop nearby, good value, tasty food, let's give it a try." I never realized Comrade Ding had such a thick skin when he was young. I was so stunned, I forgot to object. Before I knew it, I was already on my way to the noodle shop. The shop sign looked familiar, Chen's Noodle House. It was a place Old Ding used to take me to often, though back then the space was larger and the decor was nicer. Old Ding always said it served the best noodles he'd ever had. I had no idea there was such a backstory. I remember the years that followed. After Ms. Yu Ruyue and Old Ding separated, he became a regular at this noodle shop. He would sometimes chat with the owner, sitting there for the entire day. 3 bowls of noodles, steaming hot. It smells absolutely delicious. Through the rising steam, I gazed at their youthful faces. A wave of wistfulness washed over me. I always thought they had a simple arranged marriage that blossomed into love. But if Old Ding went to such great lengths to arrange their union, how did it end up in such a sorry state? To be precise, Old Ding genuinely loved me, and he loved Madame Yu Ruyue as well. He loved us more than he loved himself. Old Ding was thoughtful and reliable in many things. With a touch of innate romance, he would bring back a handful of wildflowers, still fresh with morning dew, for Madame Yu Ruyue when he returned from the fields. He would also carefully trim her nails, help pick out her clothes, and tend to her flowers. He always managed to care for her attentively in all the little details of daily life. We never doubted his love. However, he cares more about his parents and siblings than he does about me and Ms. Yu Ruyue. When our interests conflict with those of his family, we are never his first priority. Every single time, without fail, time and again, the light in Ms. Yu Ruyue's eyes grew dimmer. In my memory, Ms. Yu Ruyue was always gentle, elegant, resilient, and strong, the shelter that protected me as I grew up. Yet she suffered from insomnia and anxiety, even doubting herself, and her hair fell out in clumps. She couldn't understand why Old Ding always put himself last. making the whole family feel inferior to others. My uncles and relatives were all too happy to take advantage of our family, all while looking down on us. Old Ding was content to stay trapped in his hometown, keeping watch over his grandparents, no matter how Ms. Uruyue reasoned with him about the pros and cons, hoping to venture out into the world together. He remained unshakable in his resolve. By refusing to leave, he also held Ms. Uruyue back. Whenever Ms. Uruyue grew too frustrated and sought to build a life of her own, he would always find some excuse to lure her back home. Ms. Uruyue's love for me, and her love for him, became the ropes that bound her wings. Year after year, the bindings grew tighter. It nearly drove her mad, but why, though? I overheard their conversation. Despite his youth, Old Ding was restless with his mundane life. He too yearned to see the wider world. Even if he couldn't achieve great things, he would at least have experienced the wonders the world has to offer. I put down my chopsticks and asked him earnestly, "Lao Ding, are you really itching to go out and make your mark?" Lao Ding grumbled a complaint. "Lao Ding, I'm clearly Xiao Ding," he said. "What young person is content to just settle for the status quo? Don't look at me now. Just an apprentice at the auto repair shop. Once I've mastered the trade, I'll be a master technician out there." As he spoke, he couldn't resist teasing Ms. Uruyue a little. "Isn't that right, Ms. Uruyue, Ms. Uruyue naturally agreed with him. "Exactly," she said. "There are so many opportunities out there these days. Young people really should go out and make their mark on the world." But I knew that, in the end, Old Ding never did go out to seek his fortune. In the slow-paced small town, his considerable skill in auto repair found no real outlet. He had no choice but to open a small repair shop, fixing bicycles and motorcycles in his spare time. Sometimes, he would meticulously clean his tools, wiping each one down and arranging them neatly in his toolbox. The year's first snowfall arrived right on schedule. Ms. Uruyue would occasionally correspond with Old Ding. Old Ding's letters always came in thick envelopes that required several stamps. I observed all this with a detached eye. I've come to understand that suppression is never as effective as channeling. Old Ding might be showing some interest, but Ms. Uruyue hasn't caught on yet. If I interfere too much and make Ms. Uruyue aware of Old Ding's feelings, it could backfire. Besides, I have more important matters to attend to. I write to my grandfather every day, urging him to rest on time and take care of his health. Even Ms. Uruyue was surprised by my dedication, yet misfortune always strikes without warning. It started with just a few coughs, which Grandpa didn't pay much mind to. With his students' final exams approaching, he just went to the clinic to get some cold medicine. Sometimes he'd even forget to eat. That was, until Grandpa was rushed to the hospital with acute pneumonia. By the time we hurried to his side, he was unconscious with a high fever. The doctor said his condition was quite serious, a case of polymicrobial infection. The course of treatment will be quite long, and it will require high-grade antibiotics. And high-grade antibiotics are never cheap. He advised the family to brace themselves for what's ahead, with tears in her eyes. Grandma went home to raise the money, planning to bring back some daily necessities as well. She asked Ms. Uruyue to stay home and look after little Do Ding. Uruyue. After making all the arrangements, we arrived at the hospital, prepared for a long-term stay. During that period, Ms. Uruyue, myself, and Su Zhao took turns asking our homeroom teacher for leave. Going to the hospital to care for Grandpa allowed Grandma to go back home to check on things and get a bit of rest. Our homeroom teacher sighed, remarking on the strong bond between Su Zhaozhong and me. She comforted Ms. Uruyue, reminded us not to neglect our studies, and ultimately approved our leave requests. I never imagined a simple case of pneumonia could become so serious. Ms. Uruyue felt the same way. That day, after Grandpa finished his 4-drip and fell into a deep sleep, we sat wearily outside the hospital room. Ms. Uruyue gave a bitter smile. "All your thoughtful efforts were in vain. You reminded my father every day to take care of his health, and yet he still fell ill." Ms. Uruyue. "As long as his life isn't in danger, that's what truly matters." I looked into her eyes, which were glistening with unshed tears. "Don't you agree?" Ms. Uruyue embraced me, burying her face deeply into my shoulder as the profound worry she had been holding back finally poured out. I patted her back and held her tight, just as she had comforted me every time I was upset. At that very moment, the sound of someone running hurriedly echoed from the far end of the corridor. Following the sound, I saw Old Ding, completely out of breath, seeing the tearful Mrs. Uruyue, Old Ding pulled a bag from inside his coat and, still panting, handed it to her. I heard about what happened to your family. Here's 1,000 yuan I managed to put together. Please take it for now. Ms. Yuruyue wiped her tears. Brother Ding, thank you. But we still have some money for now. It's not necessary. Old Ding insisted, pushing the money into her hand. Your father will have plenty of expenses. It's good for you to have this on hand for emergencies. The money was in a transparent bag, through which you could see a thick, bulging stack of bills. Even though they were neatly bundled together, you could still see the different denominations of the bills. They ranged from a single cent all the way up to $100. All the money was arranged in order of its face value. It was clear just how much care the person who collected it had taken. I couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. Actually, in this day and age, 1,000 yuan is not a small amount. When I was very young, I remember that 10,000 yuan households were an exceedingly rare phenomenon. So, even back then, Old Ding was already quite fond of Ms. Yuruyue. Without another word, Old Ding set down the money pouch and turned to leave, as I watched the stunned Ms. Yuruyue. A sudden wave of panic washed over me. She gazed intently in the direction Old Ding had gone, and a new light suddenly kindled in her eyes. That inescapable sense of fate descended like a fishing net, enveloping and binding me completely, leaving even my soul weary and trapped. I don't even know what to do next to stop the inexorable wheel of fate, but then it hit me. Old Ding was just an apprentice at an auto repair shop. His monthly income was meager. So where did such a large sum of money come from? I got up and went after him, convinced that the source of this money was crucial. I need to find him and get to the bottom of this. I rushed as fast as I could and finally caught up with him at the hospital entrance. Old Ding, wait up. Old Ding stopped and sighed with exasperation. Student Ding I've told you, it's little Ding. I'm only 2 years older than Ryu. Old Ding, where did you get this money? It's mine, of course. Tell you Ryue to use it without any worry. That's a lie. Even though Grandma and Grandpa's household is well off, of the 4 sons and 1 daughter, Old Ding was the one who got overlooked. There's no way he could have that much money. It's said that after Madame Ryue married Old Ding, the 2 of them sat on the bed together to tally up their family's assets. All they had were 3 rundown rooms and a couple of meager acres of poor land. Their most valuable possessions were a bicycle and a sewing machine. Old Ding had saved up to buy those himself. They even had to grow their own food just to get by. They stood there, holding hands, their eyes brimming with tears. That's from hunger. Old Ding, tell me the truth. Where did this money really come from? Old Ding saw my stern expression and realized I intended to get to the bottom of it. He was worried that Madame Ryue suspected the money was ill-gotten and was afraid to use it. He plopped down on the curb, watching the passers-by, and said lazily, Ding tell Ryue to use it without worry. The money is really mine. I've left the family. That money is for me to get a wife. A storm of shock and turmoil surged within me. I asked hoarsely, Old Ding, are you going to use that money to marry Ryue? Old Ding fell silent. He was quiet for a long moment before putting on an air of indifference. I'd like to marry Ryue, but she's going to university. How could a mere auto repair shop apprentice like me ever be good enough for her? He said, I just want to help her, to make things a little easier for her. Honestly, I haven't thought about anything beyond that. He gazed idly up at the sky. I can't leave this place. Let Ryue go out and see the world for me. Then I can tell everyone, I've got a university student for a friend. How impressive is that? I looked at him, a thought striking me like a bolt of lightning. You got all that money from the family division. Was there some other condition? He glanced at me. You're young, but you're sharp. My parents, my brother, and my sister-in-law all pooled their money together for me. They gave me every bit of cash the family had. Once I take the money, I'm bound to stay in my hometown, to look after my parents. I can't go and build a life in another city. A bolt of lightning seemed to crack inside my head. I sat there dumbly on the roadside, feeling utterly lost and adrift. So that was the truth of it. This was the real reason Old Ding could never leave his hometown, why he could never go out and seek his fortune. That 1,000 yuan alleviated the financial hardship in Madame Ryue's family during her youth. Yet it condemned her and Old Ding to a lifetime of unease. The money was akin to blood money. Because of that 1,000 yuan, Old Ding forever felt indebted to his parents and brothers. He sacrificed his grand ambitions, grinding away his life in the mind-numbing repetition of the fields and factory workshops, which bred estrangement and a growing distance between him and Madame Ryue. But in the beginning, his only intention was to help Ms. Ryue. to spare her from undue hardship. It's just that neither Ms. Uruyue nor I ever heard old Ding mention any of these things. I thought he was simply a man who valued his family and was deeply attached to his homeland, unwilling to leave. After I came of age, Ms. Uruyue tried to divorce old Ding on multiple occasions, even going so far as to sit in the Civil Affairs Bureau office several times, yet, it was always Lao Ding who went back on his word. He believed Ms. Uruyue was just throwing a simple tantrum, and that the bond between them had always been strong. He even considered the conflicts and disagreements Ms. Uruyue had repeatedly mentioned to be minor issues. He was a filial son to his parents, shared a close bond with his siblings, and enjoyed great camaraderie with his friends. He sometimes neglects our little family, neglecting Madame Uruyue and me, yet his love for us is plain for all to see. He believes that as long as Madame Uruyue can let go of her worries, they will remain the closest of partners, sharing a pillow. But I have seen Madame Uruyue's tears and her desolation, time and again. Their first argument happened the time I got lost on the mountain. Mrs. Uruyue didn't see me among the group of friends returning home. When she went to look for old Ding to help search for me, she couldn't find him anywhere. In her panic, she went out alone late at night with a flashlight and searched for me until midnight. I can only imagine what it must have felt like for her, alone in those shadowy woods, with nothing but the rustle of grass and the hum of insects for company. As I clung to her back, I could hear her stifled sobs, choked with a mixture of grievance and fear. That night, old Ding was away helping his sister and didn't return until daybreak. From my earliest memories, whenever my grandparents, aunts, or uncles came to old Ding for help, no matter the time, he would drop whatever he was doing and rush over. Once, then again, and again. Mrs. Uruyue's smiles grew fewer and fewer. She once asked me in private if she was truly being too petty. After all, they were his family. It's a terrible feeling, always being your partner's last priority and never feeling truly valued. After years of anxiety, Ms. Uruyue ultimately succumbed to depression. She became a rather unpleasant little old lady. It was as if a hedgehog had finally raised its quills, only to end up scarred and wounded. She said her whole life has been too exhausting. She wishes she had never met him. She never wants to see him again. After Madame Uruyue left, old Ding's hair turned white overnight. That once cheerful and sprightly old man seemed to have his spirit snuffed out in an instant, radiating an aura of utter decline. It was only then that he truly faced the problems between them and understood Madame Uruyue's anguish, but it was all too late. He moved into Ms. Uruyue's house, tending to her flowers and keeping the place in perfect order, as if she were still there, on his armchair. Her unfinished sweater remained draped until the very end. I walked with Su Zhao outside all through the night. I didn't say a word, and he didn't ask a thing. As dawn broke on the horizon, I looked at his dark circles, and he looked at my puffy eyes. We both laughed at the same time, without a word spoken. I returned to my place and found the backpack I had with me when I crossed over. Without a word, I shouldered my bag and headed to the hospital. Holding Ms. Uruyue's hand, I found an empty hospital room. I dumped all the money from the bag onto the floor. Bundles of 100 yuan bills lay piled high on the ground. Mrs. Uruyue was stunned. She covered her mouth, exclaiming, "Are you out of your mind? What are you doing?" She grabbed my bag and started stuffing the bundles of cash inside. Frantic with worry, what if someone sees this? I took her hand and said, "Mrs. Yu, I'm giving all this money to you. Please, don't take old Ding's money, okay?" My tears fell. That 1,000 yuan was never meant to be a lifeline. It was a shackle placed upon old Ding. It trapped the two of them for a lifetime. If he hadn't taken that money, old Ding wouldn't have had to swallow his pride. Madame Uruyue would not have met a tragic end in the depths of despair. Perhaps they would have lived a happier life, a life filled with even greater joy. Madame Uruyue lowered her head to wipe away my tears, smiling at me. "All right, I won't accept it." I returned the money to old Ding exactly as it was. He was taken aback and didn't want to take it back. I told him I had already covered all the medical expenses. Throwing away his future for $1,000 was sheer folly. He might even drag the woman he loves down to suffer alongside him. Lao Ding, no matter what hardships or troubles you're facing, don't try to shoulder them all alone. That's not noble at all. Lao Ding looked at me for a moment, then took the money. He said, "Ding-e, it suddenly occurred to me that having a daughter like you would be quite nice." I waved goodbye without turning around, my face streaked with tears. I returned to the hospital and saw Ms. Uruyue waiting outside the ward. She had been waiting for me. Let's talk. We sat on a bench in the hospital's small garden. A crisp breeze blew in, carrying the refreshing scent of pine needles. I told her about the home I remembered. It held warmth and sweetness, conflict and strife, and knots that could never be untied. I spoke of my mother's final, unyielding resolve. In life, we did not share a bed. In death, we shall not share a grave. I also spoke of my father's difficult position. I went on, saying a great many things. In the end, we all fell silent. I said, Ms. Urue, you remind me so much of my mother. That's why my only wish for you is to live a life of freedom and ease, unbound by constraints, to always follow your heart. Ms. Urue embraced me, holding me for a very, very long time. In winter, the night falls especially early. I buried my head into my thick coat and said, sometimes I think mother is too soft-hearted. She had already made it out there and was doing quite well for herself, yet the smallest lie, as long as it concerned father or me, could lure her right back. She shouldn't be so soft-hearted. Ms. Uruue's voice held a distant, ethereal quality as she said, your mother must have had an inkling, didn't she? Her love for your father was a complex mix of gratitude and guilt. She resented his neglect and was chilled by his actions. Yet she was also deeply moved by his affection and grateful for all he had given. Part of her wanted to escape, while another part forced herself to accept it all. That's why it hurts. Don't worry, I won't repeat their mistakes. I'll live well. Grandpa's illness lingered until spring before showing significant improvement. Although he still coughs from time to time, he's doing much better than expected. Ms. Urue weathered her ordeal just as I had hoped. And she did not drop out of school. Old Ding also returned that 1,000 yuan. He planned to wait until the weather warmed up and, once he had completed his apprenticeship, to travel and see some other cities. And so the days passed, one after another. Su Zhao would sometimes gaze at me for a moment and say I had become even more beautiful. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my heart, and my whole body relaxed. I lazily tapped on his desk, urging him to get back to his studies. I was pleased to see his face fall. Ms. Urue and I sometimes go out for noodles with Old Ding. Old Ding once pointed at me dramatically and said, Ding, your eyes, brows, and nose look just like mine. Rolling my eyes, I thought to myself, nonsense, I clearly take after Ms. Urue much more. Amidst the relentless chorus of cicadas, the college entrance exams arrived right on schedule. During the agonizing wait for my results, I spent my days lazing around at my grandparents' house, catching fish and playing in the mud with my uncle, Uru Zhao. Whenever Su Zhao managed to drop by, he would always wrinkle his nose in disdain, then he'd help us carry our little haul of fish and shrimp back home. His maternal grandparents learned of his predicament and reached out to him, so, he spent most of this time with them. They said if he failed the college entrance exam this time, they would send him to the military. Su Zhao agreed. We were all waiting for the results. Su Zhao didn't make the cut after all. Ms. Urue and I got into the same university. The three of us sat together for the last time, and I brought out the alcohol I'd bought in secret. In the little park next to the school, I watched with perfect composure as they winced and grimaced from the spice. I couldn't help but break into a broad, hearty laugh. With red-rimmed eyes, Su Zhao asked me to wait for him, vowing to repay me 1,000-fold for what I had given him. I simply waved my hand in response, saying nothing. Ms. Urue hugged me tightly and cried out, saying we would be best friends for life. Hidden in the shadows, I spotted Old Ding lurking off to the side. He felt a mix of joy and melancholy. After a few drinks, he couldn't take his eyes off Ms. Urue. Her eyes sparkled with starlight. He said he had already spoken with his family, and when the time came, he would join us on our journey. We are heading for the Ivory Tower. He is determined to walk a path of thorns. A smooth and open road lies ahead. I don't know if they'll end up together, but it doesn't matter anymore. Ms. Urue has become strong. She will steer her own life with great command. This time, she will experience a love that is pure, untainted by other emotions. But I know my time is running out. My efforts altered the course of their destiny. Regardless of whether Ms. Urue and Old Ding end up together, I will no longer appear in the original timeline. At Ms. Urushi's wedding, I gave her that watch as a gift. I can just picture the look of delighted surprise on her face when she unwraps it. I spun my little uncle around and around in my arms. After spending the whole summer together, I'm now his absolute best friend. I saw Su Zhao off. He looked so handsome in his military uniform. He waved to me vigorously, his eyes growing red. MS, Yuruyue, Lao Ding. And I arrived in the same city. Lao Ding bid us farewell and left for the factory his master had recommended. MS, Yuruyue and I went to the university. Gazing at the vibrant, youthful campus within, I finally felt a great weight lift from my shoulders. It was enough to witness MS, Yuruyue embrace her new life and embark on a different path. That was all I needed. MS, Yuruyue turned back and called out to me, urging me to join her. I just smiled and waved her off. I gently released my grip on the IOU, the one MS. Yuruyue had written for me. It fluttered away like a butterfly on the wind, until it vanished from sight. Just like me, I will disappear, and no one will remember me, as if I had never been here at all. Goodbye, MS, Yuruyue, may your life be as splendid as brocade, free of all regret. End of text. Side story. 1. Yuruyue. As the senior student helping with orientation took my luggage, I was waving a greeting toward the school gate, but the gate was bustling with people, all of them unfamiliar faces. I turned around with a sense of loss, wiping the tears from my face, feeling as though I had lost someone profoundly important. University coursework was no light load, and I soon became very busy. Only in the occasional quiet moments, my heart ached as if a piece of it was missing, a raw and persistent pain. I began to suspect I was unwell, when Ding Mozhan came to find me. He suddenly blurted out, "Why is it so quiet? Where's that little girl who can't stand the sight of me?" My heart skipped a beat, and I stopped in my tracks. "What little girl?" Ding Mozhan scratched his head. "You know, the one, what was it? I can't seem to remember." I stared at him intently, my heart pounding even faster. Ding Mozhan scratched his head for a long while, but still couldn't figure it out. He felt his memory was fading. As many of his recollections had suddenly become hazy, he asked me with no small amount of worry, "Yuruyue, you're a university student, you're going to be a teacher, and I hear you'll be studying psychology. Tell me, could this be some kind of illness? Was he sick too?" My suspicions only grew stronger. These doubts reached their peak when I received Su Zhao's letter. To my surprise, Su Zhao's letter to me contained 2 separate letters inside. On the stationery with red lines on a white background, he described his recent arrival at the military camp, an ordinary, unremarkable account, meant for me. There was another letter on perfumed stationery, suffused with the scent of pink peach blossoms. Aside from Su Zhao's signature and the date, the page was completely blank. How utterly bizarre. I called the number Su Zhao had left on the letter. Su Zhao answered with obvious delight, but his voice faltered the moment he recognized mine. "Yuruyue, what's wrong?" After I finished speaking, he fell silent for a long time before hesitantly saying, "I don't remember. I don't know why a letter with only a signature was included in the envelope I sent you." My palm gripping the phone receiver grew sweaty. I asked him, "Su Zhao, do you feel like you've forgotten something? Ding Mozhan and I, both of us are having problems with our memories." "Su Zhao, I think I've forgotten someone very important." Su Zhao's breathing suddenly became rapid. "My letter was written to her." "Then, who is she? I really wish I knew who she is. Just the thought of losing her leaves me breathless with sorrow. She must have meant a great deal to me, too." Ding E. When I opened my eyes, the sunlight outside the window was brilliant. I stared blankly at the deep blue sky, feeling a little lost for a moment. I've already fulfilled my wish, so why haven't I vanished? I placed a hand over my chest. The profound sense of joyful fulfillment within was undeniably real. "So, what's going on?" A hoarse voice spoke up. "You're awake. How do you feel?" I turned towards the sound and realized I was in an unfamiliar room, with its plain white walls and sparse furnishings. It looked like a hospital room. A tall, straight-backed figure sat with his back to me behind a potted plant, his voice strangely familiar. I replied, "I'm all right." He remained silent for a long moment before letting out a sigh. "And you still don't regret it, even now?" I knew who he was, the staff member who asked me if I'd have any regrets before I entered the time capsule. I thought of old Ding, spirited and finally free of his burdens, of MS, Yuruyue, whose future was bright, gentle yet resilient, of my grandparents, healthy, at peace, and serene, of MS, Yurushi, who was full of hope for life, of little Yuruzhao, just a tiny sprout. And then there was Su Zhao, standing tall and handsome in his military uniform. In the end, my arrival changed their future. I wouldn't regret it, even if it only made things a little bit better and gave them a few more choices in life. I told him the answer. This time, he was silent for even longer. "Under normal circumstances, your time travel altered your parents' fate, you shouldn't appear in the original timeline, you should have vanished. The fact that I'm still here obviously means this is not a normal situation. I remained silent, waiting for him to continue. He changed the subject instead. As you know, while technological progress in our era is rapid, the birth rate is low, therefore, survivors of temporal displacement like you are assigned partners by the state. I hesitated. So, you are, he declared with absolute certainty, your state-assigned partner. Yeah, right, I'm not buying that for a second. Sure enough, I heard the sound of stifled laughter. The figure stood up, turned around, and opened their arms to me. A wave of immense joy washed over me, and I felt my eyes well up. The man before me was tall and long-limbed, with handsome features, and he was gazing at me tenderly. It was Su Zhao. It was actually Su Zhao. He pulled me into a full embrace. The initial surprise quickly gave way to confusion. Gazing at his still youthful and handsome face, I couldn't help but ask, Uncle Su, is this a case of reverse aging? Or have you just mastered the art of preserving your looks? Su Zhao's face darkened, and he gritted his teeth. Uncle Su. I looked at him with an innocent expression. He looked back at me with resignation, and in the end, we both burst out laughing. All the awkward uncertainty and the strangeness of our reunion vanished in that instant. We found our way back to the selves we knew best in each other. I asked him, what on earth happened? 3. Su Zhao. After hanging up the call with Ruyue, Su Zhao frowned, realizing his own memory was also failing him. He seemed to have made a promise to someone. He wanted her to wait for him, and he vowed to treat her 1,000 times better. But who was she? Why is it that thinking of her fills my heart with such bittersweet joy, a happiness so sharp it aches? The timing of their memory loss was too perfectly aligned. It was as if an entire year had been surgically excised from their minds. The whole situation was utterly baffling. They didn't dare speak of it openly, but began quietly investigating their own missing memories, trying to piece together the truth. They had truly forgotten about someone, yet, no one knew who she was. What was her name? What did she look like? How did they meet? And how did she leave? No one knows. She appeared out of nowhere and vanished from their lives just as mysteriously. She left not a single trace, begrudging them even a memory. As he said this, Su Zhao patted Ding Yi's head. The intensity in his eyes startled her, and she instinctively looked down. I'm sorry, I didn't know it would turn out this way. I thought you would all forget. Su Zhao shook his head dismissively, his eyes like the warm sun of spring, a faint smile playing within them. He continued speaking. Just when they were at their wits' end, the situation took an unexpected turn for the better. That was several years later, while serving in the military. Su Zhao was admitted to a military academy and later transferred to a research institute within the armed forces. He discovered that some researchers were working on projects related to time and space. The time travel novels Su Zhao had read suddenly came to mind, and in a flash of inspiration, a wild idea took shape. If all other possibilities have been ruled out, could that impossible person have come from across time itself? After a long hesitation, he produced the down jacket, a garment of immense value with no discernible origin. Sure enough, traces of temporal turbulence were detected on it. The entire research institute was thrown into an uproar. Su Zhao calmly returned to his residence. He carefully retrieved that peach blossom stationery, bearing only a signature and a date, and suddenly broke down into uncontrollable sobs. So, she had truly existed. Later, they discovered more items: Yuruchao's toy gun and car, and Yurushi's watch. This included Yuruyue's entire family, Ding Mozhan, and even him, all of whom had their predetermined fates altered after coming into contact with her. Surprisingly, the ones most deeply connected to her turned out to be Yuruyue and Ding Mozhan. Based on the temporal information carried by these artifacts, research into spacetime technology has begun to take shape. With the researchers' assistance, they gradually began to recall her appearance, along with scattered fragments of memory. On a very quiet afternoon, Su Zhao received a call from the old professor. They had discovered her true identity. They said her name was Ding Yi, the daughter of Yuruyue and Ding Mozhan. Su Zhao sat in the research institute for a long time. Finally, wiping the tears from his face, he went to find the two of them. After graduation, Yuruyue was assigned to a high school as a Chinese language teacher, while Ding Mozhan opened his own auto repair shop. The two had been in a relationship for several years. They were deeply in love, yet they kept putting off getting married. The first thing he said upon meeting them was to tell them to go get married right away. Before they could even ask, he gave them a brief rundown of the situation. Careful not to breach confidentiality, Ding Mozhan paused, then suddenly said, I knew it. I kept wondering why her eyes and nose looked so much like mine. His voice choked with emotion. So, she's my daughter. Yuruyue was already sobbing uncontrollably. The moment Ding Mozhan finished speaking, she wordlessly grabbed his arm and pulled him away. Go back and get the documents, let's get married. Yet, they still had no idea how to bring her back. The old professor said that Dingy had altered their fate. She would not appear in the original timeline. Even if Yuruyue and Ding Mozhan had a child, that child might not be Ding Yi. She may have vanished into the river of time and space, never to exist again. But Su Zhao refused to believe it. He refused to believe, if she could cross time and space to meet them, why couldn't he traverse time to find her? He was going to find her. Su Zhao joined the research institute. Driven by his silent urgency, the technology for time-space travel matured rapidly within just a few years. Then, one day, the old professor sought him out. He gave Su Zhao a whole spiel about the chicken and egg paradox, wrapped in Zen-like mystery. In the end, he concluded that Ding Yi's time travel was inevitable. She was destined to travel back to 1985, alter their fates, and in doing so, create the very conditions that would lead to the invention of time travel technology. Su Zhao fell silent. For all these years of marriage, Su Ruyue and Ding Mozhan have held off on having a child to make room for Ding Yi. But if that's the case, where does the future Ding Yi come from? The old professor patted him on the shoulder and said meaningfully, parallel universes. He took Su Zhao to see the newly developed time capsule. Su Zhao's mission is to lead a team to Ding Yi's timeline, establish a temporal management bureau, and facilitate Ding Yi's time travel. He finally crossed the vast river of time to meet her once more. When the fated moment finally arrived, he watched Ding Yi resolutely stride toward the time capsule and couldn't help but ask, do you have any regrets? If this succeeds, you'll vanish. Ding Yi's footsteps did not falter. Su Zhao shielded his eyes behind her, unable to hold back his tears. After arriving in this time and place, he had once investigated his own circumstances. Before Yuruyue dropped out of school, his father had already cut off all his financial support. Swallowing his pride, he went south to find work, only to vanish beneath the relentless wheels of Nanjing's traffic, never to return. Su Zhao's gaze grew distant for a fleeting moment, but in the next instant, his warm, easy smile returned. He patted my head. You're now a staff member of the Temporal Administration Bureau. That's why you didn't vanish after the time jump was complete. I was stunned, my confusion only deepening. When did I join the Temporal Administration Bureau? I have no memory of that. After traveling through time, not only did I not vanish, but I somehow ended up with a government job. Seriously, that's a thing. Su Zhao deadpanned, trying to pull a fast one on me. Family benefits, before I could process it. His voice dropped to a lower tone. Ding Yi, do you want to go see them? He looked into my eyes and said slowly, look at them now. After all the changes you've wrought, what have they become? I saw Ms. Yuruyue and old Ding once again. Their appearance was nearly identical to my last memory of them, yet their demeanor and spirit were worlds apart. They were a sprightly little old man and a lively little old lady, living with a free-spirited, unconstrained, and optimistic attitude. On the day I visited, the couple was dancing the Latin in the dance studio of the senior university. I felt a touch of hometown timidity and hesitated to approach them. Su Zhao gave me a gentle nudge. Go on. They've been waiting for you. Su Zhao once said that they never had children their whole lives. Just to preserve a place for me in this time and space, they always held on to the belief that I would return, watching their lively, graceful, and exuberant dance steps from outside the glass wall. I couldn't help but feel my eyes well up. Now, they are finally living life on their own terms. Wonderful, truly wonderful. Mrs. Yuruyue and old Ding embraced me tightly, as our classmates teased and asked questions. Their eyes grew moist. This is my daughter who's been away for so long. She's finally home. By the time I was seated in the Timespace Administration, my emotions had already settled. Su Zhao handed me an employment contract and said with calm composure, this time travel trip must have drained your savings completely, leaving you penniless. Right, it really did. I never thought I'd survive the time travel. I converted all my savings into the era's currency, and now I'm completely broke. Su Zhao began. Since time travel technology emerged, some have journeyed to right wrongs or save lives. Others, however, seek to steal another's life for their own selfish gain. The Timespace Administration's mission is to find these people and bring them to justice. He extended his hand to me, a warm, sunlit smile reaching his eyes. Student Ding Yi, would you like to join us? I took his hand and smiled faintly. Uncle Sue, I suppose it's not out of the question. Story 2, Gu Qiyan fell for a cocktail waitress and was dead set on dumping me, his genius scientist fiancé. In my past life, I loved him. To secure his inheritance, I tried to make him cut ties with that bar girl. Little did I know, they'd go through 99 rounds of her running and him chasing in their tragic soap opera. Their child even ran away mid-drama, leaving the waitress infertile for life. 5 years later, after he took over the Gu Empire, on the eve of his billion-dollar wedding to that waitress, he killed me with a 100-carat diamond, and she can't stand the sight of you, he said. A life for a life, the only place you belong is down there, serving our child as a maid. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day he publicly humiliated me and called off our engagement. Gu Qiyan, will never marry a boring woman who spends all day cooped up in a lab. The light from the crystal chandelier was harsh, and Gu Qiyan's voice, amplified by the microphone, filled every corner of the banquet hall. He stood on the stage, pointing at me, his lips curled in undisguised contempt and disgust. The one I love is Eun-hee. She's pure, kind, and delicate like a morning glory that needs to be cherished. Not you, Shinanxian, some so-called genius who's cold as ice and only knows how to talk to data and test tubes. Behind him, the woman in the white dress, with red-rimmed eyes, clutching pitifully at the hem of his jacket, was Lin Eun-hee. She was the woman who sold drinks at the Allure nightclub, the one who haunted his every waking thought. The room instantly erupted into chaos. Shinanxian, that research prodigy from the Xing family, he's not even as good as some cocktail waitress. TSK. I heard she slaved away for Gu Qian's new energy project for months, practically working herself blind, and for what? She's not even that great looking, always wearing a sour face. She's got nothing on Lin and she's charm. Men, you know, they all prefer a woman who knows how to play the game. The Xing family's reputation is really in the gutter this time. Countless gazes, filled with pity, disdain, or schadenfreude, pierced through me like needles. I stood there, the champagne I'd prepared to celebrate the project's success still clutched in my hand, my fingertips icy cold. This scene felt all too familiar. In my past life, it was right here, under the same scrutinizing gazes, that I had desperately pleaded with him not to call off our engagement, for the sake of his inheritance, for the dignity of the Gu and Xing families, begging him to leave Lin and she. And what was the result? In return, I received only his escalating humiliation, the 99 farcical rounds of their cat and mouse chase, and the blame for the child, lost by accident, a loss that left Lin and she infertile for life. It was 5 years later, on the eve of his ascension to head the Gu Empire and his $10 billion betrothal to Lin and she, that he hurled a 100-carat diamond at my forehead. And she doesn't want to see you. A life for a life, the only place you belong is down there, serving our child as a maid. A dull ache throbbed at my temple once more, the memory of that cold, unyielding impact and the despair of a life draining away, forever seared into my soul. I took a soft breath and lifted my head, meeting Gu Qian's triumphant gaze, the one that was braced for my tearful collapse. My face held none of the agony or humiliation he expected, only a chilling calm. Finished, I spoke, my voice quiet, yet it strangely hushed the clamor in the room for a moment. Gu Qiyan froze, his brow furrowing. Shinanxian, what's with the act? I know you're madly in love with me, but feelings can't be forced. I cut him off directly. Took my phone out of my clutch, and right in front of him, dialed a number and put it on speakerphone. Ring. After a few rings, a deep, authoritative male voice came through the speaker, filling the silent banquet hall. And Xian, calling at this hour. Is there good news about the project? It's Chairman Gu Tingfeng. Everyone held their breath, watching Gu Qian's face shift instantly to one of shock and suspicion. I slowly curved my lips into a smile and spoke, clear and deliberate. Uncle Gu, the project was a great success. However, there's something more important right now. Your son, Gu Qiyan, has publicly announced his intention to marry a nightclub bartender. He unilaterally tore up our engagement contract, declaring he'd rather have that woman than me, the daughter of the Xing family, the future mistress of the Gu family. There was a 2-second silence on the other end of the line, followed by a pressure so low it seemed to travel through the airwaves. Where is he? Put him on the phone. Gu Qian's face paled, and he instinctively lunged forward to snatch the phone. I sidestepped his attempt, my gaze sweeping over the guests below. I watched as their expressions shifted in an instant, from mockery to shock, and finally to speculation. Then, I dropped the bombshell. That won't be necessary, Uncle Gu. Since Gu Qiyan is so determined to humiliate me and our entire Xing family by choosing a barmaid, I demand a change in the marriage arrangement. I paused, feeling my heart thump powerfully in my chest, savoring the sweet vindication of my first counterattack since being reborn. I agree to the marriage alliance, but the groom must be your eldest son, Gu Qi, the heir to the Gu family, I declared, my voice ironclad and leaving no room for doubt. It's time for someone else to take that title. Boom, the entire banquet hall erupted into chaos. What? Xing Anqian is going to marry that vegetative patient, Gu Qi. She's lost her mind, she must have been driven insane. Gu Qi has been lying there for 3 years, whether he'll ever wake up is a real question. She's condemning herself to a living widowhood, all out of spite. Is it worth it? Will the Xing family even agree? Gu Qiyan acted as if he'd heard the most ridiculous joke in the world, bursting into hysterical laughter and pointing his finger right at my face. Xing Anqian, have you gone completely mad? Marry my brother. That living corpse, ha ha ha, you'd rather chain yourself to a vegetable than admit you lost to Anqi. You're nothing but a pathetic, pitiful worm. Lin Anqi promptly nestled into Gu Qian's arms, looking at me with timid, tear-filled eyes. Miss Xing, how could you? Young Master Qi is already in such a pitiful state, how could you still take advantage of him? I looked at this despicable pair. The memory of their hypocritical performance in front of me from my past life superimposed onto this moment, making me so nauseated I could almost retch. On the other end of the line, Gu Tingfeng's voice sounded again, carrying a trace of imperceptible caution and a certain calculated flexibility. Anqian, are you certain you know Qi's condition? I am certain, I replied without a moment's hesitation. Compared to an heir whose heart belongs to a barmaid, who cannot separate personal feelings from business, and who might lead the Gu family into unpredictable risks, a stable marriage alliance that comes with the full support of the Xing family is the superior choice for Gu Corporation, is it not, Uncle Gu? I went straight for the jugular. Gu Tingfeng is a businessman, one who places immense value on profit and family reputation. Gu Qian's actions today have crossed his bottom line. Sure enough, Gu Tingfeng fell silent. That silence was as good as an admission. Gu Qian's laughter died in his throat. In disbelief, he shouted into my phone, Dad, you can't listen to her nonsense. She's just trying to get back at me. Shut up. Gu Tingfeng's furious roar came through the receiver. Gu Qian, get your ass back here right now, and bring that woman of ill repute with you. The call was slammed down. The dial tone buzzed, but it felt like a stinging slap across the faces of Gu Qian and Lin Anqi. Gu Qian's face was ashen, his gaze dark and venomous as it fixed on me, as if he wanted to tear me limb from limb. Lin Qi's face was etched with terror as she clung tightly to Gu Qian's arm, her quiet sobs barely audible. I didn't spare them another glance, walking straight towards the banquet hall doors. Wherever I passed, the crowd instinctively parted to make way. The looks directed at me had shifted from initial pity and scorn to shock, curiosity, and even a trace of awe. Oh my God, is Xing Anqian actually going through with it? That's a ruthless move, cutting the problem off at the root. Gu Qian is in deep trouble now. Chairman Gu values his reputation above all else. Could it be? The Gu family is really about to see a major shake-up. I stopped at the doorway, without turning back. I spoke just loud enough for the deathly silent crowd behind me to hear. Second young Master Gu, don't forget to inform your pure and innocent little daughter Flower. Get ready to call me sister-in-law. 2. The room fell into a deathly silence. Gu Qian snapped out of his shock and snarled at me. Xing Anqian, have you lost your mind? Marry my brother. He's been a vegetable for 3 years. Are you really so desperate to get back at me that you'd condemn yourself to a living widowhood? Lin Anqi tugged at his sleeve, her eyes brimming with tears. Qian, don't be like this. Miss Xing might just be acting on impulse. I couldn't be bothered to watch their little performance any longer. I turned and walked away. Stop right there. Gu Qian tried to block my path. I turned and gave him an icy glare. Young Master Gu, touch me again, and I can't guarantee you'll be allowed into the Gu Corporation building tomorrow. His hand froze mid-air. I possess evidence of his past project violations. In my previous life, I was soft-hearted and never used it, but this time, I won't be so lenient. The eyes of the surrounding guests shifted, their expressions changing from amusement to careful assessment. Is Xing Anqian serious? Does she have dirt on Gu Qian? Looks like the second young Master Gu has bitten off more than he can chew. I ignored the gossip and left directly. The next day, Gu Tingfeng called me personally, and Xian. I've thought about what you said yesterday. For Qi Yi, It truly is unfair to you, but if you insist, the Gu family welcomes you. I knew exactly what he was scheming. The Xing family behind me, and the research project in my hands, were far too important to the Gu Corporation. Trading a comatose son for a powerful ally and a stable line of succession, he was getting a bargain. I don't feel it's unfair, Uncle Gu, I said, but I have two conditions. First, after I marry Gu Qi, all shares and assets under his name will be managed by me on his behalf. Second, Gu Qiyan must leave the core of the group and be transferred to an overseas branch. He is not to return to the country unless summoned. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Agreed. After hanging up, I smiled. Gu Tingfeng was truly ruthless. For the sake of profit, he could discard his own youngest son without a second thought. The news spread, causing an uproar. Gu Qiyan stormed into my home, his eyes bloodshot. Shenanxian, you're vicious. You think you can exile me. In your dreams. I sat on the sofa, leisurely flipping through Gu Qi's medical report. This isn't exile. It's an opportunity for you to fly away with your one true love. What's the matter? Not willing? Or perhaps you can't bear to part with the Gu family's wealth and luxury. He was left speechless, his face turning pale then ashen. Lin and she had followed him in, standing behind him. She spoke in a fragile voice. Miss Xing, please, let Qiyan go. This is all my fault. I lifted my gaze, my eyes sharp as blades. Of course it's your fault. Who else's would it be? Her face paled, and her eyes welled up with tears. And one more thing, I added, from now on, please address me as Mrs. Xing, or, the young mistress. Gu Qiyan was trembling with rage, pointing at me. You think marrying my brother will bring me down? Let me tell you, as long as I'm at Gu Corporation. Don't you dare think you've won. Is that so? I chuckled lightly. Then you'd better make the most of your time and take a good, long look at the Gu Corporation building. Next Monday, you'll be reporting to the African branch. What? Gu Qiyan completely lost control. Impossible. My father would never. The transfer order has already been issued. I cut him off. Chairman Gu signed it himself. Would you like me to fax you a copy? He froze on the spot. As if all the strength had been drained from him, Lin and she panicked too, clutching him tightly. Qiyan, Africa, I'm not going. It's so chaotic there. I'm terrified. Watching this pitiful pair clinging to each other, I felt nothing but irony. Don't want to go. I raised an eyebrow. Fine, announce right now that you're renouncing all inheritance rights from the Gu family, severing all ties, and running off to work construction with your one true love. Do that. And I'll have your transfer order revoked immediately. Gu Qiyan stared at me, his eyes burning with fury. His lips trembled, but not a single word escaped them. Of course he couldn't speak. How could he possibly give up the Gu family's wealth and status? It seems your love still needs money to thrive, I said, standing up to dismiss him. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. The mosquitoes in Africa are terrible. So don't forget your repellent. Gu Qiyan was dragged away by Lin and she, who was in tears. Not long after they left, I received a call from the butler of the Gu family's old residence. Miss Xing, the young master. The young master just moved his finger, clutching the phone. My heart gave a sudden, heavy thud. Gucci, are you waking up? A full 2 months earlier than in my previous life. It seems my rebirth has truly changed some things. A week later, Gucci and I held a quiet, low-key wedding ceremony. Gu Qiyan was still packed off onto a flight to Africa, with Lin and she tearfully following along. At the wedding venue, only Gu Tingfeng and a few senior family elders were present. I stood in my wedding dress beside the bed of the comatose Gucci and completed the rites. No one had high hopes for this marriage. They were all just waiting to see how long this auspicious bride, brought in to improve his fortune, would last. On the 3rd day after the wedding, I moved into Gucci's villa and took full control of his affairs. His private lawyer and medical team were initially wary of me, but I quickly won them over with my sharp business acumen and my surprisingly deep understanding of Gucci's medical condition. I was reviewing the last project Gucci handled before his coma, a land acquisition deal with excellent prospects but currently at a deadlock. In my past life, Gu Qiyan had relied on the follow-up plan he swindled from me to crack this tough nut and win the board's favor. Now, he's out of the picture. I gathered the project team, pulled several all-nighters in a row to revise the plan, and personally met with key stakeholders. The resistance was immense, with many paying lip service while secretly waiting to see me fail. Madam, the other party's representative is being extremely difficult. They're digging in their heels and refusing to budge. I heard the second young master has been in remote contact with them from Africa. trying to cut in and steal the deal. I set down my coffee cup, my eyes turning cold. Tell them I'll be there in person tomorrow at 3 p.m. Also, anonymously send a copy of the evidence regarding Gu Qian's private contact with the other party and his promises of improper benefits to Chairman Gu. My assistant was taken aback for a moment, then immediately complied. The next day, I arrived punctually at the negotiation meeting room. The other party's representative was arrogant and condescending, throwing up every possible obstacle. Ms. Sheng, it's not that I don't want to do you this favor. It's just that the terms offered by your Gu group lack sincerity. I turned on the projector directly and pulled up a document. Mr. Zhang, regarding that plot of land in the East End you've been sitting on for 5 years, the zoning approval still hasn't come through, has it? His expression shifted slightly. What if I told you that next month, the new subway route will be announced, and it just happens to run right by your property? I smiled faintly and pulled up another set of data. Also, your company's financial report from last quarter seems to have a few issues. Would you like me to put in a good word for you with the Securities Commission? The man broke out in a cold sweat, his bravado instantly deflating. Miss Sheng, what are you implying? It means you have a choice: either sign the contract on my terms, and we can all walk away happy, or, I dropped the smile, my gaze turning sharp, I can guarantee that property of yours will never see the light of day. And your company will have more than just a little trouble on its hands. Half an hour later, the contract was signed. I walked out of the conference room with the signed documents and received a furious call from Gu Tingfeng. That bastard Gu Qian, how dare he pull this stunt behind my back? And Xian, I owe you one this time, just doing my job, Dad, I replied calmly, after hanging up the phone. I knew Gu Qian's days in Africa were about to get a lot tougher. As news of the project's success spread, opinions of me within the Gu family began to shift. Who would have thought the young mistress actually had some real skill? A far cry better than that second young master who only knows how to party at nightclubs. I shut out the world. Every day, aside from handling official duties, I would stay by Gucci's bedside, reading financial news or simply sitting in silence. The doctor said talking to the patient more often could aid in recovery. I don't know if he can hear me, but I need to speak, to talk about my plans, my hatred, and my absurd past life. Gucci, you'd better wake up soon, I whispered, gazing at his sleeping profile. Watching the spectacle of your brother's downfall alone is a bit too lonely. His finger twitched again. 2 months later, I had almost complete control over Gucci's assets and had firmly established my position on the Gu family's board of directors. Gu Qian was struggling in Africa, and every time he tried to return home, I blocked him, unable to endure the hardship. Lin and she began posting veiled, self-pitying content on social media, insinuating that I had forced them out. Online trolls started pushing a narrative, accusing me of being a usurper with a malicious heart. I had my lawyer send a formal warning directly to her email, attaching several transaction records of her extravagant shopping sprees in Africa using Gu Qian's supplementary credit card. Miss Lin, if you keep spreading nonsense online, the next thing you'll receive in the mail will be a court summons. She immediately fell silent, just when I thought Gucci would remain asleep for a while longer. Late one night, while I was handling documents in the study, I received a frantic call from the caregiver. Madam, the young master. He opened his eyes, the pen slipped from my hand and clattered onto the desk. When I rushed into the hospital room, the doctor was conducting an examination. Gucci was propped against the headboard, his face pale, yet his eyes were unnervingly clear and sharp, holding the confusion and scrutiny of someone just regaining consciousness. His gaze swept over everyone present before finally settling on me. He stared at me for a long time, so long the very air seemed to freeze. Then, he frowned slightly, his voice hoarse and low from disuse. Who are you? I stood at the doorway of the hospital room, a few paces away, meeting his gaze, eyes that were newly awake yet already sharp. The air grew still, the doctors and orderlies held their breath. Who am I? I sneered inwardly. Outwardly, I picked up the water glass beside me, walked naturally to the bedside, and handed it to him. Xing'anqian, I said, looking at him and enunciating the 3 words clearly. Your legal wife, the person currently managing all your assets, and the one who just packed off your useless brother and his beloved barmaid to Africa. His hand, reaching for the glass, froze mid-air. The scrutiny in his eyes instantly shifted to shock, followed by a deeper, more intense contemplation. Gu Qian was sent to Africa. His voice was hoarse, laced with disbelief. Father signed the transfer order himself, I said flatly, as if commenting on the weather. He humiliated both the Gu and Xing families in front of the entire city's elite by breaking off the engagement for some barmaid. He had to pay a price. Gucci leaned against the headboard, sipping water slowly, but his gaze remained fixed on my face as if trying to see right through me. You did this. It wasn't a question, but a statement. The real credit goes to your brother and the moving love story with his true love, I said with a wry smile. I just gave it a little nudge. He didn't respond. The only sound in the hospital room was the soft noise of him drinking water. After a long while, he set the cup down. How long was I out? 3 years and 4 months, I stated the precise figure. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they held a cold, lucid clarity. 5. What's the current status of the company? The East City plot you were focused on before your coma. We secured it. The core data for the new energy project your brother was handling is with me. It's currently stalled. A few of the old foxes on the board are getting restless, but we can keep them in check for now. I reported succinctly. All business. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so well informed. He began, but the door to the hospital room was flung open. Gu Tingfeng rushed in, his face alight with emotion. Gee, you're really awake. What did the doctor say? It should have been a touching father-son reunion, but Gucci merely gave a slight nod. Father. His gaze immediately returned to me, carrying an unmistakable intensity. I want to know everything that's happened in the last 3 years, every detail. Gu Tingfeng finally noticed me, his gaze complex and tinged with a hint of barely perceptible wariness. And Xian has indeed been a great help these past few months. Gucci acknowledged, his eyes still fixed on me. From now on, you report directly to me. His tone was unmistakably in order. I raised an eyebrow, just as I thought. The eldest son of the Gu family, even after lying in a coma for 3 years, was clearly not someone to be trifled with. All right, I met his gaze, but before we get to the report, there's something that needs to be dealt with first. I took out my tablet, pulled up a surveillance video, and handed it to Gucci. On the screen, Gucci Yen was in his office at the African branch, hissing furiously at someone on the other end of a video call. I don't care how you do it, you have to sabotage that project. I won't let that woman, Sheng'anqian, have her way. And find a way to get me back from here. Gucci watched the video, his expression darkening by the second. Gu Tingfeng leaned in to look, and his face instantly flushed with rage. That bastard, he never learns. I calmly retrieved the tablet. Dad, given that Gucci Yen is openly harming the group's interests and attempting to disrupt our domestic operations, how should he be dealt with according to company regulations? Gu Tingfeng's face turned ashen. Gucci lifted his gaze. His eyes dark and unfathomable, his voice was weak from just waking, yet each word was ice cold. Strip him of all his positions in the overseas subsidiaries, and freeze all credit cards and dividend accounts under his name. He is not to set foot outside the domestic headquarters without my express permission. He looked at me, his gaze sharp as a blade. What do you think, madam? I smiled faintly, knowing this was his first test of the waters since waking up, a move to assert his authority. I think, I began slowly, meeting his intensely intimidating gaze, we can add one more item, copy the entire board of directors on the evidence of his attempts to sabotage the project. A faint, almost imperceptible glimmer of something like approval flashed in Gucci's eyes. Approved, a single word, delivered with definitive force. Gu Tingfeng opened his mouth, but in the end, he said nothing. I knew it then. Gucci Yen was finished, on the very day his own elder brother woke up. He was nailed to the pillar of shame. When the news reached Africa, Gucci Yen smashed up his office in a rage. Lin and she made a tearful, transoceanic call, her voice shrill. Sheng'anqian, you vicious woman, are you trying to drive us to our deaths? I simply held the phone away, waiting for her to finish her wailing before speaking coldly. Miss Lin, instead of barking here, perhaps you should think about how to use your pure and kind-hearted charm to convince your man to keep his head down and work hard on that construction site in Africa, so he can actually support you. After all his cards are frozen now. From the other end of the line came the sound of Gu Qian's furious roar and something shattering. I hung up the phone, feeling quite pleased. 6. Gucci's recovery speed was astonishingly fast. In less than half a month, he was already up and walking. Though his complexion remained pale, the commanding presence of one long accustomed to power had fully returned. He began taking over the core business operations I had been handling on his behalf, acting with swift and decisive force. now carrying an even sharper edge of ruthlessness than before his coma. The old foxes on the board, who had been biding their time and even secretly passing information to Gu Qiyan, immediately caught the shift in the wind. They all tucked their tails between their legs, and the frequency of their overtures to me noticeably increased. I was more than happy to enjoy the peace and quiet. I handed back most of my authority, holding on tightly only to the new energy project and the lifeblood of Gucci's personal assets. This was stipulated in our prenuptial agreement and formed the very foundation of my security. That day, I had just finished a video conference with Gucci, finalizing the plan to clean up the last of Gu Qian's remaining influence. When the intercom rang, my secretary's voice was tense over the line. President Sheng, the front desk downstairs says, Ms. Lin, and she is making a scene, demanding to see you. She says she won't leave until she does, and she's drawn quite a crowd of reporters. I raised an eyebrow. So Gu Qian's cards are frozen. Getting desperate, is he? Send her up. A few minutes later, Lin and she burst into my office, looking haggard and a far cry from the delicate, pitiable flower she'd played at the banquet. Her eyes were red and swollen as she pointed a finger at me and started yelling, Shenanxian, haven't you done enough to Qian? He's sick in Africa right now and can't even afford to see a doctor. How can you be so vicious? Leaning back in my chair, I twirled my pen slowly. He's sick, so why come to me? Go to his true love. Didn't you keep saying you love him and would do anything for him? Now's your chance to prove it. Go sell some blood or a kidney, whatever you like. She trembled with rage. If you hadn't frozen his cards, how could you possibly not even have money for a doctor? I cut her off with a cold laugh. Lin and she, spare me the act. Gu Qian's base salary from the Africa branch is more than enough to live comfortably there. Whether he squandered it all himself, or you blew it on luxury goods, you know the truth. Her face went pale, and her eyes darted away. I couldn't be bothered to argue with her. I pressed the intercom directly. Security, please escort Miss Lin out. From now on, she is not to be admitted into the building without an appointment. Shenanxian, how dare you? Lin and she shrieked, trying to lunge at me, but the security guards who arrived just in time restrained her. Watch me, I said, standing up and walking over to loom above her. And let me remind you of something. If you ever dare to cause a scene at my company again, or spread any false information online, I won't hesitate to make public that rather colorful client list from your time working at Allure. Lin and she's shriek died in her throat, the color drained from her face, and her eyes finally held a look of genuine fear as she stared at me. The security guard dragged her out, and the office fell quiet again. I sank back into my chair and rubbed my temples. My phone vibrated, a text from Gucci, brief and to the point, all taken care of. Yeah, father wants us to come back to the old house for dinner tonight. I stared at the screen, my finger pausing. Dinner at the old house. Is Gu Tingfeng trying to mend fences, or is there something else on his mind? That evening, I returned to the Gu family's ancestral home with Gucci. The atmosphere was even more unsettling than I'd imagined. Gu Tingfeng sat at the head of the table, his expression grim. Seated to his right, a woman bedecked in jewels and straining to project the air of the lady of the house, was none other than Gucci's biological mother, Lu Yuru, the woman who had clawed her way to this position by less than honorable means. The moment she saw Gucci and me walk in, her forced smile instantly froze on her face, especially when she took in Gucci's composed movements and his icy, imposing presence. She is awake. What wonderful news, Lu Yuru said in a flat, lifeless tone, though her eyes held a venomous glint. And Xian is here too. Please, have a seat. Without so much as a glance in her direction, Gucci pulled out a chair and sat down. I followed suit, taking my seat with an air of unruffled composure. At the dinner table, Lu Yuru began her routine of offering praise laced with subtle barbs. And Xian is truly capable. She's kept everything in perfect order, both at home and with the business, all these years while Qi has been in a coma. Not like our Qi Yan, he's too straightforward, too easily taken in. Now he's out there somewhere, drifting, who knows how much hardship he's had to endure. As she spoke, she dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though there were no tears to be seen. Gu Tingfeng frowned but said nothing. I set down my chopsticks, looked at her, and smiled faintly. Aunt Lu is right. Gu Qian is indeed easily deceived. However, it seems the one who fooled him wasn't some stranger, but his so-called pure and kind true love, Miss Lin, and she, the same one who, while selling drinks at the nightclub, was exceptionally close to countless customers. Lu Yuru's face instantly paled. How dare you spout such nonsense? if you think I'm lying, Aunt Lou, you can go ask around at Enchante yourself. Miss Lin was the star attraction there back in the day, with quite a list of regular patrons. You might even run into a few old friends for a chat, I said it casually, as if discussing the weather. Lu Yuru's chest heaved with anger as she turned to Gu Tingfeng. Husband, look at her, she's trying to drive me and my son to our graves. Gu Tingfeng's face darkened, he slammed his wine glass down heavily. Enough, can't you even keep quiet during a meal? It was only then that Gu Qi spoke up, his tone measured and cold. Father Qian's actions in Africa have severely damaged the group's interests. The board is deeply dissatisfied with him. If Aunt Luke continues to coddle and enable him like this, I'm afraid he won't even last at the subsidiary. Lu Yuru fell silent instantly, staring at Gu Qi in terror. Gu Tingfeng took a deep breath, clearly stung to the core. I know what I'm doing with this, let's eat. The meal concluded under a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. As we left, Lu Yuru watched the retreating figures of Gu Qi and me walking side by side, her eyes brimming with venomous hatred. Settling into the car, Gu Qi closed his eyes to rest, then spoke abruptly, your methods for dealing with Lu Yuru are far too gentle. I turned my head to look at him. He opened his eyes, a chilling emptiness in their depths. To kill a snake, you must strike its head. What she cares about most isn't Gu Qiyan, it's her status as Mrs. Gu and the wealth and luxury that come with it. I understood his meaning, I just hadn't expected him to be so merciless toward his own stepmother. Got it, I nodded. Looks like it's time to give Lu Yuru some real trouble. Gu Qi closed his eyes again, the corner of his mouth lifting in the faintest hint of a smile. If you need help, just say the word. 7. A few days later, I met with the private investigator and slid a stack of documents about Lu Yuru across the table to him. Focus on her financial transactions over the last 3 years, especially any overseas accounts. Also, dig into her private dealings with those so-called mahjong buddies of hers. The detective understood perfectly and left promptly. Gu Qi was right. For a woman like Lu Yuru, who clawed her way to the top, money and status are what she fears losing most. With Gu Qiyan out of the picture, she's definitely scrambling to secure a backup plan for herself. She can't be clean. Sure enough, in less than a week, the detective sent over the preliminary findings. Not only had Lu Yuru been secretly taking kickbacks by leveraging her status as Mrs. Gu, but she had also funneled a significant amount of assets overseas through underground banks. The real bombshell, however, was that one of her regular mahjong partners turned out to be a gigolo with a prior conviction for fraud. I held on to this evidence, biding my time. I was waiting for the right moment to strike. On the day of the Gu Group's quarterly board meeting, Gu Qi, the heir who had just awoken and swiftly taken control, was presiding. I was in attendance, both as the holder of Gu Qi's proxy voting rights and in my capacity as the head of the new energy project. Midway through the meeting, as the discussion turned to a proposed overseas investment, a director known to be close to Lu Yuru suddenly launched an attack. Qi, you've only just woken up, so you might not fully grasp the complexity of this project. I think it would be safer to hand the lead over to someone with more experience. For instance, we could ask Madame Lu to assist. She has some connections overseas as well. Gu Qi didn't even lift his eyelids, just tapped his finger lightly on the table. I caught his meaning immediately and cut the director off. Director Li, when you say experience, are you referring to the experience Madame Lu gained last year by secretly funneling 50 million in kickbacks through your nephew's company? The entire conference room fell deathly silent. Director Li's face instantly drained of color. Shenanxian, that's a vicious slander. Unfazed, I calmly pulled several bank transfer records and contract copies from my folder and had my assistant distribute them to the board members. This is the money trail showing Ms. Lu Yuru receiving kickbacks, facilitated by none other than your own nephew. Director Li, shall I present more detailed evidence, including your nephew's company ledgers, to the supervisory board? Director Li broke into a cold sweat, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. The other directors stared at the irrefutable evidence in their hands, their expressions a mix of shock and fear as their gazes turned toward me. Gu Qi finally spoke, his voice utterly calm and devoid of emotion. Director Li is getting on in years. It seems his faculties are no longer sharp, making him susceptible to deception. Effective immediately, he is relieved of all his duties within the group and may retire to enjoy his remaining years. With such casual indifference, he had just dismantled a founding elder of the company. His eyes swept across the room. Does anyone else have questions about the project lead's qualifications? Or about my wife's capabilities? The meeting room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, and no one dared utter another word. I understood that Gucci was using me to establish his authority, while also making a declaration to everyone. Shenanxian was under his protection. After the meeting concluded, I returned to my office, and Gucci followed me in. That was quick, he remarked. You're right to remind me. I poured him a glass of water. He took it but didn't drink. Looking at me instead, when do you plan to close the net on Lu Yuru? Soon, I smiled. We need to let her transfer a bit more. The sum has to be substantial for a heavy sentence. He nodded, seemingly pleased with my ruthlessness. Just then, an urgent news alert popped up on my computer. Lu Yuru, wife of the GU Group's chairman, has been taken in by police for questioning on suspicion of massive embezzlement and illegal asset transfers. The accompanying photo showed Lu Yuru being escorted by two policewomen, her face deathly pale and her hair disheveled, a far cry from her usual elegant, high society appearance. I raised an eyebrow and looked at Gucci. You're doing? He took a leisurely sip of water. Just a little side project. I see. He thought I was moving too slowly, so he poured fuel on the fire, and he did it in the most official, most irreversible way possible, ruthless, and utterly final. With this, Lu Yuru is finished for good, and Gucci Yen has lost his last foothold overseas. The phone began to vibrate frantically. It was an overseas call from Gucci Yen in Africa, his voice hoarse and desperate. Shenanxian, it's you. You're the one who hurt my mother, you vicious, heartless woman. I'll make you pay for this. I'll haunt you from beyond the grave. I hung up the phone immediately and blocked the number. Finally, there was peace and quiet. Gucci set down his water glass, walked over to the window, and gazed down at the bustling traffic below. The eyesores have been mostly dealt with. He turned, his silhouette sharp and cold against the backlight. Now, it's time to focus on the real business at hand. The real business he spoke of was gaining complete control of the GU conglomerate, and dealing with those enemies still lurking in the shadows, coveting what wasn't theirs. I knew that our marriage, born of profit and revenge, was transforming in a strange way, gradually solidifying into an unbreakable alliance. I walked to his side, standing shoulder to shoulder with him. So, what's the next move? He turned his head to look at me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile flickering in the depths of his eyes. What do you think, my lady? 8. The news of Lu Yuru's arrest fell like a massive boulder into the already turbulent, murky waters of the GU family. Gu Tingfeng was so furious he nearly had a heart attack and was admitted to the hospital's intensive care unit. No matter how much he disliked Lu Yuru, she had been the public face of the GU family as Mrs. GU for nearly 2 decades. This scandal being exposed now was a devastating blow to the family's reputation. I went to visit him with a fruit basket and overheard him raging at his confidant outside the room. Investigate, get to the bottom of this. Who leaked the information to the police? Was it that girl, Shenanxian? His confidant stammered, unable to give a clear answer. I pushed the door open and entered, wearing a carefully measured expression of concern. Father, are you feeling any better? Gu Tingfeng's face was ashen when he saw me, his anger barely contained. And Xian is here, he said. He dismissed his confidant with a wave, leaving just the two of us in the hospital room. Aunt Lu's situation took me by surprise as well, I said, setting down the fruit basket. My tone calm. However, the evidence of her embezzling company funds and illegally transferring assets is irrefutable. This is a severe blow to the group's reputation. The immediate priority is to sever ties quickly and stabilize the stock price. Gu Tingfeng stared at me, his gaze sharp, trying to find a crack in my composure. Don't you have anything to say for yourself? I met his gaze squarely and said frankly, I do. I believe we should issue a statement immediately to distance the group from Lu Yuru's personal actions. Either you or Qi should personally step forward to apologize to the affected partners, offer compensation, and do everything possible to mitigate the losses. Every word I said was perfectly reasonable and framed from the perspective of the group's interests, leaving him no room to find fault. Gu Tingfeng fell silent for a long moment, then finally waved a tired hand. Do as you say. Let Qi handle it. Understood, father. Please get some rest. I turned and left. The moment the door closed behind me, a cold smile touched my lips. A clean break, an apology. This is only the beginning. Gucci moved faster than I had anticipated. With decisive efficiency, he issued the severance announcement and personally met with the heads of the major partner companies. His approach was firm yet tactful, and he quickly stabilized the situation. Even the few board members who had initially voiced reservations fell completely silent in the face of the formidable control he demonstrated. After a brief period of turbulence, the Gu group, like a great ship, has steadied its course under the helm of Gu Qi. As for Gu Qiyan, after Lu Yuru's downfall, he completely vanished. Word has it he couldn't even hold on at the African branch, was drowning in debt, and disappeared with Lin and Shi without a trace, as if he'd evaporated from the face of the earth. I didn't bother looking for them. A couple of stray dogs aren't worth the effort, they'll inevitably crawl out of the woodwork sooner or later. That day, while representing the Gu group at a tech summit, I had just signed a letter of intent and stepped out of the conference room. At a corner in the hallway, a familiar yet wretched figure blocked my path. It was Lin Shi. She was emaciated, wearing a cheap, wrinkled dress. Her face was flushed with an unnatural feverishness, yet her eyes burned with an unnerving intensity, fixed unwaveringly on me. Xinanxian, her voice was hoarse, laced with a desperate, cornered madness. Give me the money, 5 million, or I'll expose everything. How you and Gu Qi conspired against Aunt Lu and drove Qian away. I have proof. I stopped in my tracks, looking at her. This picture of utter desperation, I could only find it laughable. Evidence, I raised an eyebrow. You mean those fabricated chat logs and transfer screenshots your con artist gigolo lover gave you? Lin and Shi's pupils contracted sharply, the color draining from her face. You, how do you know? I know more than that. I took a step forward, lowering my voice so only the two of us could hear. I also know that Mr. Wang, the one you serviced at Allure, is currently facing a lawsuit and desperately needs a fall guy. Tell me, if I delivered you to him and said you were willing to take the blame for everything, don't you think he'd be very grateful to me? Lin and Shi's body began to tremble violently, her gaze shifting from madness to sheer terror. No, you can't. I can. I straightened up, brushing off non-existent dust from my clothes. Lin and Shi, get lost. If you show your face in front of me again, what's waiting for you next time won't be a few words. It'll be 3 square meals a day courtesy of the state. As if all the strength had been drained from her body, she crumpled to the floor, utterly broken. I didn't spare her another glance and walked away. An insect like that isn't even worth my effort to swat. Back at the company, Gu Qi was waiting for me in my office. He was sitting in my chair, flipping through the latest progress report on the new energy project. Trouble? He asked without looking up. Just a fly. I swatted it away. I walked over and picked up another file. He closed the report and looked up at me, his gaze intense. We have news on Gu Qiyan. I froze. Where? Macau. He owes the casino a fortune, and they're holding him, Gu Qi said, his tone flat, as if discussing a trivial matter. The casino contacted the Gu family, demanding a ransom. I let out a derisive snort. And what does father say? Father's position. Gu Qi rose to his feet, walking over to stand before me, looking down with a profound gaze. Is that the Gu family does not harbor useless individuals, nor do we clean up after gambling addicts. I understood. Gu Tingfeng had completely given up on Gu Qiyan, so, I met his gaze. Therefore, Gu Qi's lips curved into a cold, cruel arc. I must trouble you, madam, to go to Macau personally and tidy things up. He enunciated the words tidy things up with deliberate, heavy emphasis. Seeing the undisguised coldness and resolve in his eyes, I understood perfectly. He intended to use my hand to deliver the final blow to Gu Qiyan, and to sever all of the Gu family's potential troubles at the root. Alright, I didn't hesitate for a second. I'll go. That very afternoon, I flew to Macau with my lawyer and bodyguards in tow. The casino staff led us to a dimly lit private room. Gu Qiyan was tied to a chair, his face bruised and swollen, reeking of filth. Not a trace remained of the arrogant young master of the Gu family he once was. When he saw me, he froze for a moment. Then, as if spotting a lifeline, he thrashed and screamed, Xinanxian, it's you, hurry, pay them, get me out of here. I walked up to him, stopped, and looked at him quietly. Go back, I repeated, my tone airy and detached. Back where? To the Gu family. Gu Qiyan nodded eagerly. Yes, back to the Gu family. I'm the second young master of the Gu family. They can't just abandon me. I smiled, leaned down, and moved closer to him, speaking in a voice only the two of us could hear. Gu Qiyan, don't you get it? The Gu family cast you out a long time ago. Your mother's in prison, your father acts as if you're dead, and your brother. I paused, watching the color drain from his face, and enunciated each word clearly, sent me to see you off. Gu Qian's pupils contracted violently. He shook his head frantically. No, that's impossible. You're lying. Father wouldn't abandon me, brother wouldn't either, gambling debts. 80 million, I straightened up, produced a document, and tossed it in front of him. Sign this, renounce all claims to the Gu family inheritance, and the debt is cleared. The casino will let you walk away. That's a share transfer agreement and a waiver of inheritance rights. Gu Qian stared at the papers as if they were vipers, recoiling violently. I won't sign, don't you dare, you won't. I raised an eyebrow and shot a glance at the casino manager beside me. With a wave of the manager's hand, two burly men stepped forward, pinned Gu Qian down, grabbed his finger, and forced it toward the ink pad. No, let go of me, Xing'anqian, you vicious woman, how dare you, ah. Gu Qian struggled desperately, howling and cursing. I watched with cold indifference, utterly unmoved. Finally, accompanied by a cry of utter despair, his thumb was forced onto the end of the agreement. The agreement took effect. I picked up the signed documents, gave them a final review, and confirmed everything was in order. All right, he's all yours, I said to the casino manager. The Gu family has severed all ties with this man. The manager nodded in understanding and signaled for his men to drag away Gu Qian, who was limp as a rag doll, his eyes vacant. What awaited him was the bottomless pit of the casino's debt collection. I turned and walked away from that place, leaving its stench of decay behind. Stepping out of the casino, the neon lights of Macau's night were blinding. My phone buzzed, a text from Gu Qi. It contained just one character. Done, I replied with a single character. Done. From this moment on, the name Gu Qian is to be completely expunged from the Gu family registry. 9. Upon returning to Haicheng, the internal workings of the Gu Corporation had been completely transformed. Gu Qi executed the power transition with an iron fist, leaving no room for dissent on the board. Under my leadership, the new energy project progressed at a breakneck pace. The first product is about to launch, and market anticipation is at a fever pitch. Gu Qi and I, a couple bound by vengeance and mutual interest, became the most formidable partnership in the business world. He handled external affairs, maneuvering with masterful strategy, while I managed internal operations, controlling the core technology and financial lifelines. Ours was not that of newlyweds, but of seasoned comrades who had fought side by side for years. The outside world buzzed with gossip, claiming we were merely putting on a united front while each pursuing our own ends. We couldn't be bothered to explain. On this particular day, Gu Qi, for once, came home on time, bringing a bottle of red wine with him. Let's celebrate. He took off his suit jacket and loosened his tie. The obstacles are cleared, the project is a go. I raised an eyebrow and took the glass. To our successful partnership. He clinked his glass against mine, a glimmer in his eyes. To Mrs. Gu, securing her position. I gave a light laugh and downed the drink in one go. The liquor was rich, with a fruity aroma. There's news about Lin Shi, he said abruptly. I swirled my glass. Indifferent. Is she even alive? In some small Southeast Asian country. She's sick, can't afford treatment, and is on her last legs. Gu Qi said flatly. She sent word, wants to see you one last time, says she has a secret about your parents to tell you. My parents. My hand holding the wine glass paused for a moment. My parents died in an accident during an academic expedition years ago. It's an old matter the Xing family has always been reluctant to discuss. How could Lin and she know about it? You think it's a trap? I asked. 99% sure, Gu Qi said, looking at me. Are we going or not? I fell silent for a moment, then drained the last of the wine from my glass. I'm going, even if there's only a 1% chance. I have to find out. Besides, I want to see for myself what's become of that once beautiful white lotus, how far it has withered. Gu Qi didn't try to stop me. I'll arrange for someone to go with you, he said. 3 days later, accompanied by my bodyguard, I arrived in a damp, dilapidated border town in Southeast Asia. I met Lin and she in a small clinic that reeked of mildew and disinfectant. She lay on a grimy hospital bed, emaciated, with a sallow complexion and sunken eyes. Her once proud long hair was now as dry and brittle as straw. Seeing me, a final glimmer of light sparked in her clouded eyes as she struggled to sit up. You came. Her voice was hoarse, like a broken bellows. I stood by the bed, keeping my distance, my face expressionless. Tell me the secret about my parents. Lin and she was seized by a violent coughing fit, gasping for air. A strange, venomous smile twisted her face. Xing'anqian, you think you've won. Do you have any idea? Your parents back then, their deaths weren't an accident. My heart plummeted, my nails dug into my palms. Explain. It was Gu. Her words were halting, her breath faint. it was Gu Tingfeng. He was afraid your father's research posed a threat to the Gu Corporation, so she didn't finish. Another wave of racking, gut-wrenching coughs overtook her. She violently coughed up a mouthful of dark blood, which splattered across the filthy bedsheet. I stared at her intently. Proof? Where's your proof? Lin and Chi's gaze began to grow vacant, a vindictive pleasure spreading across her face. The proof? It's long gone. Ha, Shenanxian, you're just another pathetic fool, helping your enemy build their empire. Her voice grew fainter and fainter until, with a final loll of her head, her breath ceased entirely. Her eyes remained open, frozen within them an eternity of resentment and a flicker of mockery. I stood frozen in place, the clinic's foul odor filling my nostrils, while Lin and Chi's dying words slithered like a venomous snake into my ears. Gu Tingfeng killed my parents. Is that even possible? Kill for commercial gain. A massive shock churned my stomach. I forced myself to calm down. Lin's words couldn't be taken at face value. In her final moments, she just wanted to drag me down with her, to unsettle my mind. But what if it's true? I took a deep breath, turned, and instructed the bodyguard, take care of it. Then, without a backward glance, I left that disgusting place behind. On the flight back, I gazed out the window at the churning sea of clouds, my mind in turmoil. If what Lin and Chi said was true, then had all my revenge since my rebirth become a cruel joke? Was I really helping the Gu family, who might be my father's murderers, to fight against the son of another enemy? Does Gucci know? What role did he play in all this? The plane landed, and Gucci came to meet me at the airport in person. He was wearing a black overcoat, standing by the car, his posture tall and straight, his presence commanding. When he saw me, he walked over and naturally took the bag from my hand. You look pale, he said with a frown. What did she say? I looked up at his face, usually so stern but now touched with a hint of concern, and for the first time, it felt utterly unfamiliar. My lips parted, the question on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed it back down. It wasn't the right time yet. Without proof, making a move would only tip them off and leave me at a disadvantage. It's nothing, I said, lowering my gaze to hide the turmoil in my eyes. Just seeing her like that, it turned my stomach. Gucci looked at me for a few seconds, didn't press further, and pulled open the car door. Let's go home. Sitting in the car, I watched the streetscapes whizzing past the window, a deep chill settling in my heart. 10. Back at the villa, citing the need for top secrecy during the project's final phase, I moved into the standalone study on the top floor, living and working there around the clock. Gucci didn't say anything, simply instructing the servants to deliver meals on schedule. He seemed very busy, often not returning until late at night. An invisible wall seemed to stand between us. I began to investigate discreetly. My parents were top-tier materials scientists. Back then, a national-level research project they were leading entered a critical phase that directly competed with the Gu family's core business. Not long after, they met with a fatal accident, falling from a cliff during a field survey. The official conclusion was equipment failure. Using the Xing family's connections and the access Gucci had granted me, I quietly retrieved the accident report from that year, along with Gu Corporation's confidential files from that period. The report was flawlessly written. However, within the Gu Corporation files, a copy of a board meeting minutes marked as destroyed caught my attention. It vaguely mentioned the need to handle appropriately the potential threat posed by the Xing family project. The date on the document was just 1 week before my parents' accident. Handle appropriately, my heart sank. It's not enough to serve as evidence, but the implication is too strong to ignore. I need something more concrete. I remembered an old safe left by my parents, stored all this time at the Xing family's old house. I couldn't open it as a child and eventually forgot about it. Maybe there's a clue inside. I made an excuse to return to the Xing residence. After sending everyone away, I tried countless combinations using the passwords I knew and my mother's birthday. Finally, with a soft click, the safe opened. Inside, aside from some old photographs and jewelry, there was only a single, thick notebook with a leather cover. It was my father's lab journal. My hands trembling, I opened it. The first pages were filled with complex formulas and data, until I reached the final few pages. March 15th, Gu Tingfeng visited today. He was aggressive, demanding we either halt the project or share the core data. What a pipe dream. This project concerns the national economy and people's livelihood. How could we let it become a tool for capitalists to profit? March 18th. Found signs of deliberate sabotage during the equipment inspection again. Reporting it to the police was futile. Was it the Gu Corporation? Are they truly so lawless? March 22nd, we're being followed. Yueru, my mother, is terrified. I backed up the critical data and hidden it. The diary ends abruptly here. Where is it hidden? The next few pages have been torn out. I slumped to the floor, my entire body going cold. There's no direct evidence, but the contents of my father's diary corroborate what Lin and she said with her dying breath. Gu Tingfeng, it was him all along, for the sake of profit. He actually went this far. An overwhelming tide of hatred instantly consumed me, 1,000 times more intense than when I learned of Gu Qian and Lin and she's betrayal. I carefully put away the diary, erased all traces of my presence, and left the Xing residence. Back at the villa, I locked myself in the study. The immense grief and hatred were tearing me apart. I had been reborn, single-mindedly focused on revenge against Gu Qian and Lin and she. I never imagined the true enemy had been sitting high above all along, and I had even called him father. That evening, Gu Qi knocked on the door. Come out for dinner. I took a deep breath, suppressed all my emotions, and opened the door. He stood in the doorway, his brow slightly furrowed. You haven't been yourself lately. The project pressure is getting to me. I avoided his gaze and walked towards the dining room. The atmosphere at the dinner table was quiet. He suddenly spoke up. Before you went to Macau, you asked me if I knew what Lin and she was going to say. My hand, holding the chopsticks, paused, and I looked up at him. His gaze was steady, appraising. What exactly did she say? My heart hammered against my ribs. Was he testing me, or did he genuinely not know? I set down my chopsticks, looked him straight in the eye, and enunciated each word clearly. She said my parents' deaths were no accident. Gu Qi's pupils contracted almost imperceptibly. Though his composure returned swiftly, that fleeting anomaly did not escape my notice. He knows, he must know something. You believe the ramblings of a dying man. His tone remained even, but the knuckles gripping his glass were white. Is that so? I offered a cold smile, but I looked into the Gu Corporation's archives from that year. I saw the board meeting minutes about appropriately handling the potential threat of the Xing family project. The timing was right before my parents' accident. Gu Qi's expression finally shifted. He set the glass down with a sharp clink. A deathly silence filled the study. We stood facing each other across the dining table, the air frozen solid between us. After a long pause, he slowly rose to his feet, his imposing stature casting a heavy, oppressive shadow. Shenanqian, his voice was low, laced with warning. Some things are better left unknown. Knowing too much won't do you any good. I looked up at him, refusing to back down. So it's true, Gu Tingfeng was responsible for my parents' death, and you knew about it. You might have even been involved. The last few words caught in my throat, spoken with immense difficulty. Gu Qi's eyes were as deep and dark as the sea, churning with complex emotions I couldn't decipher. He neither confirmed nor denied it. The Gu family ship is now in our hands. He circled the table, stopping before me, leaning down. He braced his hands on the back of my chair, trapping me between him and the table, his presence overwhelming. Let the past stay in the past, the present and the future are what matter now. He was so close I could clearly see the undercurrents in his eyes and sense the threat in his words, and a trace of admonition, almost imperceptible. Let it stay in the past. I repeated the phrase, finding it utterly bitter. A sea of blood and enmity, how could it ever be left behind? I looked at his face. So close to mine, this face, which had once offered me a sliver of solace and camaraderie on my path of vengeance, now held nothing but cold calculation and deceit. I shoved him away abruptly and stood up. Gu Qi, don't you dare lump me in with you. I stared at him, enunciating each word with a chilling, resolute finality. I don't want your ship, effective immediately. Our partnership is terminated. 11. After my complete falling out with Gu Qi, I moved out of the Gu family villa and into a discreet apartment owned by the Xing family. The new energy project is nearing completion, and it's my most crucial bargaining chip. Using the need for absolute quiet to make the final push as my excuse, I've cut off all outside contact, including Gu Qi. I know he's looking for me. Calls, texts, even posting people outside the Xing family's old residence and my company building. But I'm avoiding him. I need time. I need to sort out my thoughts. And more importantly, I need to find the evidence that will be a decisive, fatal blow. Just as I was at my wit's end, an unexpected person reached out to me. It was Su Man, Gu Qi's former personal assistant, a woman of remarkable competence and delicate beauty, who had voluntarily resigned not long after Gu Qi fell into a coma. I had once vaguely sensed a subtle tension between her and Gu Qi, but I hadn't pursued the matter at the time. She arranged to meet me at an extremely discreet cafe, Miss Xing, or, should I call you Mrs. Gu? Suman stirred her coffee, her smile gentle, yet with a hint of sharpness in her eyes that was hard to detect. Cut to the chase, I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. She put down her spoon and looked at me. I know you're looking into what happened to your parents, about Gu Tingfeng, about Gucci. A chill ran through me, but my expression remained neutral. What do you know? I might know more than you think. Suman leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice. The first thing Gucci did after waking up wasn't to consolidate his power, it was to secretly investigate his own father, especially that accident 3 years ago that took your parents. I tightened my grip on the coffee cup. He's investigating too. He's been investigating all along, Suman stated with certainty. He suspects his father's hands aren't clean, and that it might even be connected to the earlier illness and death of his biological mother. Gucci's biological mother had passed away from illness when he was 10, not long after. Lu Yuru entered the household, bringing Gucci Yen with her. Could it be that? An even more terrifying suspicion dawned on me. Why is he telling you all this? I stared at Suman. Suman lowered her gaze, a bitter smile touching her lips. Because, in a way, he and I are the same. My father was once Gu Tingfeng's right-hand man, and he was also one of the few people who knew the details of your parents' project. He died of a sudden heart attack 1 month before your parents' accident. A sharp intake of breath escaped me. Gucci found me, and we formed an alliance. He needed my help to gather evidence of Gu Tingfeng's past crimes. And I needed to use his influence to get justice for my father. Suman lifted her eyes, her gaze resolute. During the 3 years he was in a coma, I never stopped investigating. I have certain things in my possession. What is it? Some phone call recordings and bank transfer records that prove Gu Tingfeng ordered someone to sabotage your parents' exploration equipment and fake the accident scene. It's not a smoking gun, but it's more than enough to get the police to take it seriously and reopen the investigation. Suman took a tiny flash drive from her bag and slid it across the table to me. Also, the reason Lu Yuru managed to climb her way up back then was because she administered a slow-acting poison to Gucci's mother. The evidence for that is in there too. I took the cold flash drive. It felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds in my hand. So, the reason Gucci got close to me, protected me, and even tacitly allowed me to go after Lu Yuru and Gucci Yen, it wasn't just because of my capabilities or the Xing family behind me. Was it also because we share a common enemy? Was his previous secrecy and warning to avoid tipping our hand, or was it a test for me? Why didn't he tell me himself? I asked. He said you're too clever, and too impulsive. He needed to be sure you were a reliable ally, not a revenge-driven loose cannon who could jeopardize the entire plan. Suman looked at me. Now, he's leaving the choice to you. Do you trust him? Join forces to bring down Gu Tingfeng, and get the concrete evidence to clear your parents' names, or go it alone and risk losing everything? I fell silent. That's a lot to take in. I need some time to process it. If Suman is telling the truth, then Gucci's mind is frighteningly deep. How much of what he shows me is real, and how much is an act? I need to think about it, I said, pocketing the USB drive. Of course. Suman stood up. But, Miss Xing, time is running short. Gu Tingfeng seems to have caught wind of something. He's been making a lot of moves lately. And, she paused, her tone implying more than she said. I'm not the only collaborator around Gucci. Some people might not be too keen on the two of you joining forces. With a meaningful look, she turned and walked away. I remained seated, watching the bustling traffic outside, my mind in turmoil. Gucci, Suman, Gu Tingfeng, everyone seemed to wear a mask. And every word could conceal a trap. Is the stuff on that flash drive real, or is it just another trap to lure me in? I took out my phone and looked at the text message Gucci had sent earlier, which I had never replied to. Come back, we need to talk. My finger hovered over the screen, frozen in place. Do I trust him and take the gamble, or is it better to be safe than sorry? Hatred burned within me, but reason told me that Suman's words were most likely true. Gucci's motive for going against Gu Tingfeng was strong enough. Finally, I took a deep breath and made my decision. I replied to Gucci's text message. Meet at the apartment at 8 tonight. 12. At 8 o'clock that evening, Gucci showed up right on time at my apartment door. He wore a simple black shirt, his posture ramrod straight, a trace of weariness, almost imperceptible, touched his features, yet his gaze remained sharp, piercing, as if it could see right through a person. finally decided to see me. He walked in, closing the door behind him with his backhand. His tone gave nothing away, neither anger nor pleasure. I hadn't turned on the main lights, only the floor lamp beside the sofa. Its dim, yellowish glow carved the living room into distinct planes of light and shadow. Suman came to see me. I got straight to the point, placing the USB drive on the coffee table. She says you're investigating Gu Tingfeng, my parents' deaths, and your mother's so-called illness. Guqi's gaze fell on the USB drive, his expression unchanged, as if he had anticipated this all along. What else did she say? She said you and I share a common enemy. I stared into his eyes, not missing a single flicker of emotion. She also said there's more than one collaborator around you. Guqi walked to the opposite side of the sofa. He didn't sit down, but merely looked down at me from his height. The light and shadow carving sharp contours across his face. What she said is mostly true, he admitted, with a directness that took me by surprise. Mostly, I latched onto the word. I am investigating Gu Tingfeng, and I do need allies. He paused, his gaze turning profound as he looked at me. But Suman, she's withholding part of the truth. What part? Regarding her own motives. Guqi's voice turned colder. Her father did die because of that project, but he wasn't entirely innocent. He took Gu Tingfeng's money and was involved in sabotaging your parents' project in the early stages. Gu Tingfeng just had him eliminated later to tie up loose ends. My heart lurched. Suman knows this. Her approaching me was less about cooperation and more about using me to avenge her father. At the same time, she wanted to get the evidence of her father's bribery from Gu Tingfeng to completely whitewash his name. A cold, mocking smile touched the corner of Guqi's mouth. She never told you, did she, that her father was the one Gu Tingfeng first bribed to tamper with your parents' equipment? A chill shot up my spine. Suman, she was hiding such deep, calculated intentions all along. And what about you? I suppressed the storm raging in my heart, my gaze boring into him. How much have you been hiding from me? And who is this more than one collaborator of yours? Guqi fell silent for a moment, as if weighing his words. At that very moment, his phone rang. Its timing utterly inopportune. He glanced at the caller ID, his brow furrowing almost imperceptibly before he declined the call. But then, my phone rang as well. It was an unknown number. A sense of foreboding gripped me. I pressed the answer button, and a young man's voice, deliberately hushed and choked with tears, came through the line. Is this Miss Xinganqian? Please, you have to help my mother. I'm Guqi's son. My mother is by way. Gu Tingfeng. Gu Tingfeng is trying to silence us. Guqi's son. My head snapped up as I looked at Guqi. He had clearly heard the call too. His face instantly turned ashen, and a flicker of something I'd never seen in his eyes before flashed through them. Panic. Where are you? I steadied my nerves and asked into the phone. Where at? At the abandoned chemical plant in the western suburbs. They're going to find us. Please. The line went dead with a sharp click, leaving only the dial tone. A deathly silence fell over the living room. I put down my phone, looked at Guqi, and asked, enunciating every word, Guqi, you'd better start explaining. Who is by way, and what's all this about a son? Guqi closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, his gaze was filled with a cold, resolute determination. By way, was my lover in university, he said, his voice low and carrying a barely perceptible rasp. After we parted ways, she discovered she was pregnant and had the child. She's been hiding from the Gu family all this time, raising the child alone. Gu Tingfeng doesn't know they exist. I pressed. He didn't before. Guqi's eyes turned dark and sinister, but recently, he might have found out. He's afraid this illegitimate child's existence will affect my value and jeopardize his marriage alliance with the Xing family. So, he wants to silence me for good. I looked at him, and a wave of bitter irony washed over me. That explains it. No wonder he kept me at arm's length before. No wonder he turned a blind eye to everything I did. No wonder Suman said he had more than one partner. His protection of me, while partly due to our shared goal of dealing with Gu Tingfeng, was more likely a ploy to use the Xing family's influence and my status as Mrs. Gu to keep Gu Tingfeng in check, all to buy time and space for the woman and child he truly cares about. And I, Xinganqian, the so-called research prodigy, the so-called queen of revenge, was nothing more than a convenient pawn on his chessboard from the very beginning, or perhaps, even a human shield. A tidal wave of humiliation and betrayal nearly drowned me, leaving me more suffocated than when I first learned the truth about my parents' deaths. I looked at him and suddenly let out a low, bitter laugh, the sound dripping with desolation and self-mockery. Gucci, you really have it all figured out, don't you? I stood up, walked over to him, and tilted my head back to look up at his cold, handsome face. You used me as a decoy to draw Gu Tingfeng's fire. A shield to protect you and your precious secret love child, and once Gu Tingfeng is dealt with, you'll just kick me to the curb and reunite with your old flame to play happy family. I raised my hand and jabbed my finger hard against his chest, my fingertip icy cold. What do you take me for? Gucci grabbed my wrist, his grip firm, his gaze complicated. Xing'anqian, it's not what you think. Then what is it? I wrenched my hand free and took a step back, my eyes turning completely cold, as if frosted over. Gucci, I'm telling you, our partnership ends here. Gu Tingfeng, I'll deal with you myself. As for you, I said, looking at him, each word dripping with bone-chilling cold, you and that bastard son of yours had better pray you never cross my path. With that, I turned, grabbed the car keys and the USB drive, and stormed out of the apartment without a backward glance. The night wind was biting, cutting into my face like a knife. I slid into the driver's seat, fired up the engine, and slammed the pedal to the metal. The car shot into the night like an arrow from a bow. Destination, the abandoned chemical plant in the western suburbs. I wasn't going to rescue his precious first love or their secret love child. I was going to see for myself just what kind of person Gucci was going to such desperate lengths to protect. More importantly, I need to get the evidence that Gu Tingfeng silenced a witness by murder. 13. The western suburbs. An abandoned chemical plant. The rusted steel skeleton loomed like the bones of a great beast under the stark moonlight. As the night wind whistled a mournful howl through the shattered window frames, I parked the car in the distant shadows and slipped inside without a sound. The air was thick with the acrid stench of rust and chemicals. From deep within the factory came the sound of muffled sobs and harsh, angry shouts. You bitch, you're good at hiding, hand over that little bastard. Please, I'm begging you. Spare the child, he has nothing to do with the Gu family, came a woman's trembling plea. Following the sound, I hid behind a pile of scrap machinery and got a clear view of the scene inside. A plainly dressed woman with a pale face, though one could still make out traces of her former delicate beauty, was shielding a boy of about 7 or 8. The boy was white with fear, clutching desperately at his mother's clothes. Facing them were 3 men in black suits, their faces menacing. Holding clubs, they were Gu Tingfeng's men. Doesn't matter, being Gucci's spawn is the original sin, the lead man sneered. The boss said to clean it up. Leave no one alive. He raised the club, poised to bring it crashing down on the woman. Now, I burst from the shadows, simultaneously hitting the record button on my phone, and shouted, "Stop, I've already called the police." The men were startled by my sudden appearance, freezing in their tracks, seizing the moment of their shock. I grabbed the woman named Bai Wei and the child, growling, "Run." Bai Wei reacted instantly, scooping up the child and bolting after me. Damn it, there's another woman, get them. An enraged shout and the sound of pursuing footsteps erupted behind us. The chemical plant was a maze of complex terrain. We ran for our lives, weaving through derelict equipment and clinging to the shadows. Bullets whizzed past our ears, striking metal frames and sending sparks flying. I pulled Bai Wei behind a massive reaction vessel, momentarily cutting us off from our pursuers' line of sight. Bai Wei was gasping for air, the child in her arms whimpering softly. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror and a flicker of gratitude. You're Miss Xing. Shut up. I cut her off coldly, having no interest in hearing Gu Qi's name. I quickly checked my phone, confirming the earlier conversation and threats had been recorded clearly. This is the smoking gun that proves Gu Tingfeng hired a killer. Just then, the screech of tires and the sounds of an even more chaotic scuffle erupted from outside, punctuated by screams. Gucci is here, he works fast. I signaled for Bai Wei and the child to stay hidden, then cautiously peeked outside myself. Gucci, along with a few others, was already locked in a fierce struggle with the 3 assassins. His movements were ruthless, each strike aimed to kill, showing none of the weakness expected from a man who had just awoken from a coma. Clearly, he hadn't been idle these past 3 years. In short order, the 3 assassins were subdued and bound on the ground. Gucci strode quickly toward our hiding place, his face etched with unmistakable anxiety. Bai Wei, Xiaozhe, his gaze went first to the mother and son. Only after confirming they were unharmed did he turn his eyes to me. His expression complex and inscrutable. "Ancien, you." I stepped out from behind the reaction vessel, phone in hand, and stared at him impassively. Gucci, drop the act, Gu Tingfeng hired a killer, and the evidence is solid, you protect your woman and child, I'll get my revenge, we're even, his brow furrowed deeply, it's not what you think, Bai Wei and we've been, I don't care, I cut him off sharply. Uploading a backup of the recording to the cloud before shoving the phone back into my pocket, take your people and get out of my sight, now. I turned to leave that disgusting place behind. Xing'anqian, Gu Qi's voice called out from behind me, laced with suppressed fury, must you really go this far? I stopped in my tracks, but did not turn around. Gu Qi, from the moment you decided to use me, we were destined to be nothing but enemies. With that, I strode away and never looked back. Back at the apartment, I immediately contacted my most trusted lawyer and the core members of the Xing family, submitting both the audio recording evidence and the other incriminating evidence against Gu Tingfeng from the USB drive, prosecute Gu Tingfeng for intentional homicide, commercial fraud, illegal asset transfer, pursue every single charge to the fullest extent of the law. The lawyer looked at the thick stack of documents, his expression grave. Miss Xing, this evidence is more than enough to put him away for life, however, it might implicate the Gu group, and even, Mr. Gu Qi. I gave a cold laugh. What do I care if the Gu group lives or dies? As for Gu Qi, I paused, the image of him shielding Bai Wei and her child flashing before my eyes. A sharp pain pierced my heart. We will proceed by the book. The next day, Gu Tingfeng was taken away by the police directly from his top-floor office at the Gu group headquarters. The news exploded like a bombshell, instantly sending shockwaves through the entire city. Gu Group Chairman Gu Tingfeng arrested on suspicion of multiple felonies, shocking upheaval in a tycoon's mansion. The Gu Empire teeters on the brink of collapse. The former business titan is a murderer. Public opinion is in an uproar. Gu Corporation's stock price hit the limit down at market open, plunging everything into chaos. Sitting in my office, I watched the news footage of Gu Tingfeng's disheveled figure being escorted into a police car. I felt no sense of triumph, only a chilling numbness. I've finally avenged my parents, so why does my heart feel so hollow? My phone rang. It was Gu Qi. I hung up immediately and blocked the number. Moments later, the office door was flung open. Gu Qi stood in the doorway, radiating hostility, his eyes bloodshot. Xing'anqian, are you satisfied now? His voice was hoarse, laced with bone-chilling coldness. I looked up, meeting his gaze calmly. Mr. Gu, this is Xing family property. Please leave. He advanced step by step, the overwhelming pressure he exuded nearly suffocating, bringing down Gu Tingfeng, destroying the Gu Corporation. Is this the outcome you wanted? This is what the Gu family deserves. I stood up, facing him down. And that includes you, Gu Qi. You used me, you deceived me. We're not finished settling that score. He grabbed my wrist with a sudden, crushing force, as if he meant to shatter the bone. I never meant to hurt you. Let go. I struggled with all my might, but couldn't break free. Gu Tingfeng has fallen. The Gu Empire is finished. What's next? He closed in on me, his breath hot on my face. Are you coming for me and Xiaozhe next? Xiaozhe, that bastard's name, seeing the undisguised protectiveness in his eyes. The last shred of that ridiculous affection in my heart was utterly extinguished. That depends on whether you're standing in my way, I said coldly. Gu Qi stared at me, his gaze as if he wanted to skin me alive. After a long moment, he suddenly laughed, a cold and cruel smile. Fine, very well, Xing'anqian, since that's how it is, don't blame me for what comes next. He abruptly released me, turned on his heel, and strode away. I watched his back disappear through the doorway, then slowly sank back into the chair, a chill spreading through my entire body. I knew then that there was no going back for Gu Qi and me. What followed would be a fight to the death. Unbeknownst to me, shortly after Gu Qi left, a piece of negative news about me quietly climbed the trending charts. Shocking. The mastermind behind the Gu family's collapse is the Xing family heiress, willing to frame others to seize power. The accompanying images were a blurry photo of Gu Qi and me in a tense standoff outside the chemical plant, along with some meticulously edited, out-of-context so-called evidence. 14. Gu Qi's counterattack was as swift as it was dirty. The slanderous trending topic, propelled by capital, remained pinned at the top. Trolls and misinformed netizens launched an overwhelming wave of online harassment against me. Some even began doxing my address and harassing my family. The stock price of Xing Group was also affected and began to fall. A few old-timers on the board, who were already resentful of my rapid rise, began to stir. applying pressure both overtly and covertly. Looking at this familiar tactic of manipulating public opinion, a cold, mocking laugh rose within me, a chip off the old block. Truly, the Gu family's legacy of underhanded tactics, passed down from Gu Tingfeng to Gu Qiyan, but I was no longer the Xing'anqian of my past life, the one who knew only how to endure in silence. I immediately summoned the Xing Group's PR and legal departments to convene an emergency meeting. First, in the name of Xing Group and myself, issue the strongest possible legal letters, sue every single marketing account and troll farm operator who spread those rumors. The list has been compiled by the tech department, leave no one out. Second, contact all our media partners, release the official details of Gu Tingfeng's arrest, along with partial evidence of his years of illegal operations, tax evasion, and even suspected organized crime ties. Muddy the waters. Third, I looked at the head of the tech department, release the care package I had you prepare earlier, use anonymous IPs, and stagger the drops, split it into batches over time. The head of the tech department understood perfectly and gave a firm, heavy nod. After the meeting, I sat alone in my office, staring out at the gloomy, overcast sky. My phone vibrated on the desk, a series of abusive texts from unknown numbers. I deleted and blocked each one, my face an impassive mask. Gucci, you think you can crush me with public opinion, let's see who's holding the better cards. That very afternoon, the tide of public opinion began to shift in a subtle but unmistakable way. First, several major state media outlets reposted the police bulletin detailing Gu Tingfeng's alleged involvement in multiple serious crimes, effectively cementing his guilt. Shortly after, a wave of damaging leaks about the Gu Group began circulating online. They detailed years of internal mismanagement, nepotism, and illicit profit transfers. The revelations included outlandish incidents from Gu Qian's tenure and specifics on how Lu Yiru exploited her status as Mrs. Gu to amass personal wealth. The public's attention began to shift. So the Gu family is this rotten, the corruption goes right to the core. Looking at it this way, maybe Xing'anqian really was forced to fight back. Is Gucci trying to deflect blame by slinging mud now? However, this was just the appetizer. Late at night, just as most netizens were winding down, an encrypted forum suddenly dropped several bombshell revelations, which spread to major social media platforms at an astonishing speed. The first one, smoking gun evidence of Gucci's love child, the mother, by way, exposed, far from a pure white moonlight. She's a scheming woman who climbed into his bed. Attached were photos of Bai Wei frequenting nightclubs in her youth and being intimate with various men, along with chat logs showing her privately contacting paparazzi, attempting to expose the child's identity to extort a huge hush money payment. Article 2, Gucci in cahoots with stepmother Lu Yiru. Is his 3-year coma real or fake? An in-depth exposé of the Gu family eldest son's power grab. This piece meticulously analyzes the timeline of Gucci's actions after waking up, strongly implying a long-standing collusion with Lu Yiru. It even suggests he might have faked his coma, all to eliminate Gu Tingfeng and Gu Qiyan in one fell swoop and seize the entire Gu empire. While lacking direct evidence, the analysis is compelling and highly inflammatory. Article 3, the true face of the devoted husband. Gucci's secret offshore accounts exposed. Mysterious flow of massive funds revealed. This post published information on several offshore accounts linked to Gucci, along with records of substantial money transfers. The timing, coinciding with his awakening, is highly suggestive. The detonation of these 3 bombshells sent the entire internet into a frenzy. Oh my god, this is information overload. Gucci is no saint either, a bastard, a schemer. And he's moving assets. The whole family, from the oldest to the youngest, is rotten to the core. So Xing'anqian is the real victim here. Used in a marriage scam by that father-son duo. No wonder she fought back. Who wouldn't go crazy in her shoes? The court of public opinion did a complete 180. The same people who cursed me out before are now sympathizing with and supporting me with equal fervor. The filth Gucci tried to sling at me has come back to bite him 100-fold. I watched the comments scroll across my screen, then closed the laptop with an impassive expression. Can't handle it already, Gucci. This is only the beginning. The next day, I made a high-profile appearance at the Xing Group press conference. Facing the barrage of cameras and flashing lights, I stood there in a sharp black suit, with impeccable makeup, commanding the room with my full presence. First, regarding the recent false statements circulating online targeting me personally and the Xing Group. Our legal department has initiated full legal proceedings. We will pursue this matter to the fullest extent of the law and show no leniency. My voice was clear and resonant, leaving no room for doubt. Furthermore, I hereby formally announce that Shin Group will immediately and completely terminate all cooperation with Gu Group. We have also initiated legal proceedings to hold them accountable for their outstanding payments and contractual breaches. A wave of commotion swept through the assembled reporters. Ms. Sheng, regarding your marital relationship with Mr. Gucci, I cut the question off directly, raising my left hand to reveal a bare ring finger. My marriage to Mr. Gucci began as an elaborately orchestrated deception, I said, my gaze sweeping across the room with icy scorn. Now that the truth is out, this farce must come to an end. I have instructed my lawyers to file for divorce. As for Mr. Gu and his mistress and illegitimate child, I paused, my tone dripping with contempt. I wish them a lifetime of blissful entanglement. With that, I turned and walked away without a backward glance, leaving the media frenzy behind me. The press conference was a resounding success. Xing Corporation's stock halted its decline and rebounded. My decisiveness and firm stance won the market's approval. The Gu family enterprise was plunged into an abyss. Its stock price hit the limit down for consecutive sessions. Partners terminated contracts one after another, banks called in loans, and internal staff were thrown into panic, triggering a wave of resignations. Gucci was at his wits' end, trying desperately to stabilize the situation, but faced with a collapse as unstoppable as a landslide and a relentless stream of damaging revelations, he was powerless to turn the tide. It was at this very moment that I received an unexpected package. 15. Inside was a stack of photographs and a paternity test report. The photos showed Gu Qiyan and Lin Enshi. They had actually sneaked back into the country and were hiding out in a squalid, run-down urban village. Both looked haggard and emaciated, fighting, cursing, and clawing at each other over money like a pair of raving lunatics. And that paternity report revealed that the child Lin Enshi had miscarried all those years ago, shared no biological relation to Gu Qiyan. Staring at the report, I suddenly remembered the shifty, evasive look in Lin Enshi's eyes in my past life, when she was weeping and complaining to Gu Qiyan after the miscarriage. I see, what a clever bait and switch. She had no idea who the father was, or even if she did know it wasn't him, she was trying to pin it on Gu Qiyan, and then, through a cruel twist of fate, she lost the baby, which only ended up proving her accusation that I drove her to her death. I let out a cold laugh and anonymously mailed this gift to Lu Yuru, who was still in prison clinging to the hope that her son would get her out. They say that after Lu Yuru saw it, she howled like a madwoman in her cell all night long, completely losing her mind. As for Gu Qiyan and Lin Enshi, I just accidentally let slip their hideout to a few loan sharks. I heard later that Gu Qiyan had a leg broken by the debt collectors. He and Lin Enshi were thrown out of the urban village, reduced to begging on the streets, fighting each other bloody over a mouthful of spoiled food. They grew to hate and torment each other, wallowing in the mire, unable to live and unable to die. This brings me far more satisfaction than simply killing them ever could. With that trash dealt with, I poured all my energy into the final push for the new energy project. This achievement was wholly mine, Shenganxian's. With no connection whatsoever to the Gu family, the project was a resounding success. On the day of the launch, Shin Corporation's stock price soared. I stood in the spotlight, basking in the attention and acclaim of the crowd. I knew I had finally secured my footing. I was no longer someone's daughter, someone's fiancée, or someone's wife. I was simply Shenganxian. After the press conference, I ran into Gucci in the backstage lounge. He wasn't invited, he had lost a lot of weight. His suit hanging loosely on his frame, his eyes were heavy with exhaustion and defeat, the former arrogance and icy poise of the Gu family's young master long gone. And Xian, his voice was hoarse, tinged with a plea. "We need to talk, Mr. Gu," I said, seated at the vanity and meticulously removing my earrings, not even bothering to look his way. "There's nothing left for us to discuss. The Gu family is finished, I admit it." He walked up behind me. Looking at my cold reflection in the mirror, "I was wrong to use you, to hide things from you, but I have no feelings left for Bai Wei, and I had no idea about Xiao's existence before. Everything I did was to protect the child. He's innocent, after all, innocent." I let out a scornful laugh, finally meeting his eyes through the mirror. "Gucci, spare me the theatrics. Your Gu family is rotten to the core. Gu Tingfeng is a murderer, Lu Yuru a poisoner, Gu Qiyan a vicious fool. And you," I stood up, turned around to face him directly, my gaze sharp as an ice blade. "You're selfish, ruthless, and will stop at nothing to get what you want, even using marriage as a pawn in your schemes. What's the fundamental difference between you and that scumbag father of yours? You come to me with this now only because you've lost, because you have nothing left, hoping to find some last shred of comfort or capital for a comeback in me." I took a step closer, my tone cutting and cruel. "Let me tell you, Gucci, you don't deserve it." His face turned deathly pale, his lips trembling, as if my merciless words had lacerated him from head to toe. I truly," he attempted to protest. "Truly what?" I cut him off, my eyes filled with utter disgust. "Truly had feelings for me. Don't say such nauseating things. Your sincerity is worth even less than your father's money or your brother's brains." I picked up my handbag, ready to leave. "Shinanxian," he snarled behind me, with a final note of resentment and despair. "Do you have to be so heartless?" My steps halted, I turned slowly, looking into his bloodshot eyes, and felt nothing but utter absurdity. "Heartless," I repeated the word as if hearing the biggest joke. "Gucci, you're talking to me about affection. Are you even worthy?" He took a step forward, trying to grab my arm, his voice laced with a near-frantic urgency. "Yes, I used you. I kept things from you, but we were married. Do you really think any other man would dare take you after me? Shinanxian, with your notorious reputation for being ruthless, what respectable family would ever bring a woman like you into their home?" I looked at him, at the deep-seated arrogance and prejudice of feudal patriarchy in his eyes, as if I were staring at a pile of revolting sludge. In this day and age, he still thinks divorce is a stain on a woman, that I need to rely on a man, that I need to be wanted. The last shred of my patience vanished, my hand shot up, smack, a sharp, resounding slap landed hard across his face, cutting off his foolish words. Gucci's head snapped to the side from the force, the clear, red imprint of 5 fingers instantly bloomed on his cheek. He clutched his face, staring at me in utter disbelief, as if I had committed some unspeakable transgression. "Gucci," I shook my slightly numb wrist, my voice dripping with ice, "put away your nauseating, feudalistic mindset. I, Shinanxian, have never been anyone's appendage." I took a step forward, locking my gaze with his astonished eyes, and hammered each word, crystal clear, into his ears. "Did you think I agreed to the arranged marriage back then because I loved you, or because the Xing family needed the Gu family? Let me tell you, it was neither. If it weren't for leveraging the Gu family's influence to bring down Gu Tingfeng faster and uncover the truth about my parents. Do you honestly think your rotten to the core clan is worthy of being associated with the name Shinanxian? Marriage?" I scoffed, my eyes filled with utter contempt and disgust. "That was never anything but a burden to me, a tool, certainly not something I ever pursued. Now, the tool has served its purpose. It's time to discard the burden." Gucci stood frozen in place, his face flushing red, then paling, then turning ashen. It was as if he was seeing me for the first time. His eyes wide with profound shock and a kind of bewildered disillusionment, as if his entire world had just crumbled. The laughable notions about marriage and a woman's worth, which were the last shreds of dignity he clung to, were utterly shattered by my words. His lips trembled, but not a single word could escape them. Watching him in this utterly broken state, I felt not a flicker of emotion, only complete and utter disgust. "Gucci, don't ever show your face to me again. The sight of you makes me sick." 16. Later, I heard Gucci's life took a turn for the worse. With the Gu family's bankruptcy and liquidation, he was saddled with astronomical debt. The once high and mighty young master of the Gu family was forced to sell off everything he could, including the cherished old house left by his mother, just to barely plug a fraction of the hole. He tried to stage a comeback, reaching out to all his old buddies from the good old days, but when the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Everyone kicks a man when he's down. No one wanted to touch his mess, and certainly no one dared to risk offending me or the now powerful Xing family by helping him. He had to start from the very bottom, taking jobs at small companies or picking up odd freelance projects. But accustomed to giving orders, his innate arrogance and that out-of-place aristocratic air caused him to hit a wall at every turn. His notorious reputation preceded him: marriage fraud, exploiting women, ruthless ambition, and a scandalous illegitimate child. Any family with a shred of social standing steered clear of him. The society heiresses who once flocked to him now regarded him as if he were a venomous snake or a wild beast. On one occasion, at a small industry mixer, he was seen trying to strike up a conversation with a Miss Liu, whose family was in the building materials business. She had once been one of Gucci's most ardent admirers, but at that moment, Miss Lu merely cast a contemptuous glance his way, as if afraid of catching something foul. She quickly took 2 steps back, linked arms with her male companion, and spoke in a voice pitched perfectly to be heard by those nearby. Well, if it isn't the great young Master Gu, what's the matter? Shouldn't you be off looking for your precious white moonlight and your child instead of slumming it in a place like this? How laughable. You were completely overshadowed by a bastard half-brother and a stepmother your whole childhood, and yet you still haven't learned your lesson, pulling the same stunt yourself. You've got no one to blame but yourself. A wave of suppressed snickers rippled through the crowd. Gucci's face turned ashen, his fists were clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white, yet he couldn't muster a single word in his own defense. In the end, under the weight of the crowd's mixed gazes, some pitying, others scornful, he made a hasty, humiliating retreat. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Later, I heard he'd moved to a shanty town, crammed into a dilapidated tenement building with the kind of people he once wouldn't have given a second glance. He toiled day in and day out just to get by, his hair turning gray prematurely, making him look a good decade older than he was. His illegitimate son, Xiaoxia, fell ill in those squalid conditions. With no money for proper treatment, the illness took root and became chronic. Unable to endure the hardship, Bai Wei one night took what little savings Gucci had left and ran off with another man, never to return. This left Gucci behind with his sickly, resentful son. The two of them left to flounder in the mire. The man who once schemed to control everything, who believed he held all the cards, ended up utterly alone and destitute, stripped of even his most basic dignity. He became the very kind of person he had always looked down upon. After that, I rarely heard any news about him. Perhaps he was eking out a meager existence in some obscure corner, or perhaps, who cares? Occasionally, when I see reports about the Xing family or myself in the financial news, I might even have a fleeting moment of recollection, remembering that such a person once existed, but that's all there is to it. He has long been left far behind in my dust, reduced to a trivial, even sordid footnote in my glorious life. Mentioning him isn't even worth the breath. The end.